Yep.
All right. Good morning. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by notifying the Omaha World Herald and the Nebraska Press Association, OPD's outlets newsletter, oppd.com, and social media. By displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on June 13th, 2025. A copy of the proposed agenda for this meeting has been maintained on a current basis and is readily available for public inspection in the office of the district's corporate secretary. Additionally, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection on oppd.com and in this meeting room. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining us on WebEx, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You're in listen-only mode. If you have a technology question, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. Our agenda for today's meeting is as follows. We'll conduct a closed session this morning to discuss 3 topics: CE growth and effectiveness update, natural gas and rail transportation update, and customer growth update. We'll conclude this morning's closed session no later than 9:50 a.m. in order to open the WebEx meeting to allow the public and OPD staff to join. We'll begin public session at approximately 10 a.m. and receive reports from each committee. Director Spurgeon, do we have a motion to go into closed session?
Yes, we do. I move that the board go into closed session at this time. That's it.
8:01.
8:01, thank you. To discuss 3 topics. 1, CEO growth and effectiveness update, and 2, natural gas and rail transportation update, and 3, customer growth update. With respect to the CEO growth and effectiveness update, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitive and confidential compensation and retention information, as well as performance evaluation information. With respect to the natural gas and rail transportation update, a closed session is necessary for the protection of the public interest because the discussion involves sensitive utility infrastructure information, confidential cost information, regulatory matters relating to generation resources, and potential resource acquisition strategies, the disclosure of which would disadvantage the district in future negotiations with potential contractors. With respect to customer growth update, a closed session is necessary because the discussion will involve competitively sensitive customer information. And this motion requires a second to move forward.
Second. Director Bowman? Yes. Director Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Director Ford?
Yes.
Director Howard? Yes. Director Hudson?
Yes.
Director Moody?
Yes.
Spurgeon?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, the motion to go into closed session is passed. This closed session will be limited to 3 topics: CEO growth and effectiveness update, natural gas and rail transportation update, and the customer growth update.
Okay,
We're back.
thank you. Yep.
All right. Welcome. A motion and second is required to reconvene in open session.
So moved.
Second. Bowman? Yes.
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Howard? Yes. Hudson?
Yes.
Moody?
Yes.
Spurgeon?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
All right, the motion to come out of closed session at 10:02 a.m. is carried. This closed session was limited to discussion regarding 3 topics: CEO growth and effectiveness update, natural gas and rail transportation update, and customer growth update. No vote or other board action was taken. Notice of the time and place of these committee meetings was publicized by notifying the area news media, by notifying the Omaha World Herald and the Nebraska Press Association, OPD outlets newsletter, oppd.com, and social media. By displaying such notice on the arcade level of Energy Plaza, and by emailing such notice to each of the district's directors on June 13th, 2025. Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder to those joining us on WebEx, please mute your microphones to reduce background noise. To members of the public, thank you for attending. You're in listen-only mode. If you have any technology questions, please use the chat feature in WebEx to communicate with the event host. We'll take public comments at the end of today's meeting, as well as at the board meeting on June 19th, 2025, which will be conducted in person at the Omaha Douglas Civic Center and begin at 5 p.m. The public may attend in person or remotely via WebEx by going to oppd.com. Joining me today in person are my fellow board members, Amanda Bogner, Mike Kavanaugh, Sarah Howard, John Hudson, Craig Moody, Mary Spurgeon, and Eric Williams. We also have members of our executive leadership team, Steve Bruckner, our general counsel with the Fraser Stryker Law Firm, and OPPD staff. Additionally, we currently have 20 attendees in this meeting consisting of OPPD employees and members of the public. Today, we'll hear the following committee reports. Director Bogner will report on the risk committee, Director Spurgeon on governance, Director Moody on finance, Director Howard on customer and public engagement, and Director Williams will report on system management and nuclear oversight. Josh Clark. In just a moment, Josh Clark will give the safety briefing.
Sorry, Josh.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Josh. That was...
Get going quickly. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll do a quick safety briefing. As you can see on here, if anybody's feeling ill, hopefully you're not here. You're at home getting rest and hydration. No matter what, always be aware of the emergency exits, which we have several here. Also be aware of any AEDs, first aid, and fire suppression materials, all of which are directly outside the main doors there with the security officers near the exits. Watch out for any environmental hazards. We had some pretty nasty weather go through last night. Thankfully, nothing too bad. And I think there's some possibilities today too. So please be aware of that. Watch out for that. Be prepared. If anybody needs any assistance, go ahead and just let us know. We'll get you help as quickly as possible. In the event of any emergencies like evacuations or whatnot, we'd ask to use the emergency exits for fire or any other emergency exit types of things. We would go to the parking lot directly to the north where we'll gather and have accountability. And in the event of severe weather, we have a warehouse type room clear in the back here, which will be directed by the BCBS staff once we exit this door. Also reference your psychological safety. All of our meetings, we try to be respectful. We want to hear healthy conflict, hear from multiple perspectives. This is a trusting environment and one where we want to promote a culture of curiosity. And then finally, always be aware of your digital safety. We have had several discussions in-house about digital safety, emails, phishing scams, that kind of thing. Always be wary of those types of things. Always be prepared to report those to your IT departments. And for us specifically, we have a button within our email that we can hit in case we're suspicious of any email. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Josh. All right, now let's get started with Director Bogner on the risk committee.
All right, thank you. The risk committee held our quarterly meeting on June 11th, and all the directors assigned to that committee were present. As a reminder, this is a new committee for us this year, and so the participants in the committee are made up of the chairs of the other committees. After a safety briefing, we had a security update from Ms. Brown. She provided awareness of the security update that will be presented later today in our second closed session of the day. And then we moved on to the enterprise risk management topic. And we heard a presentation about the enterprise risks and validated the impact of any changes and answered committee questions during that discussion. On the heels of that, we also received overview of the NERC compliance program that we have here at OPPD. And so that was to support oversight of operational and regulatory risk, and again, answer committee questions. This was a long agenda, just say that. We also talked about artificial intelligence around the idea of how OPPD is navigating artificial intelligence. We talked about some of the use cases that the district is currently using artificial intelligence to carry out workarounds, but then also some of the bumpers that we're putting on how our staff uses artificial intelligence. We heard the 2025 audit report and controls program update, where Michelle DeSuri provided a review of audit findings and control assessment. so that we have an understanding of key risk areas and ensure the management response and support provides effective oversight and control of those risks. Following that, we talked a little bit about our external auditor performance, presented a performance review of our external auditor, which is Forbes Mazars. And we also talked a little bit about forthcoming RFP that we're going to be issuing to solicit proposals for a new external auditor, or perhaps the same. We expect Forbes Mazars to respond to that RFP. We also spent some time talking about board expense reimbursement governance policy, which we are going to bring forward, I think in August, a red line of some changes that we would like to make to GP 14. So board, you can look for that in the August timeframe. We also talked a little bit about the BL2 outside general counsel relationship and some policy changes that we think we'll be bringing forward on that as well. That is forthcoming. Today, we're going to hear the SD15 Enterprise Risk Management Monitoring Report. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Foch for that.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the recap of the risk committee agenda. Actually, I'm going to be introducing Dan Wiskowski, who is our director of risk management innovation. He'll be walking through the monitoring report. Thanks, Jim.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah. All right. I get the joy of presenting the SD15 monitoring report. Next slide, please. Here's the language directly. I mean, really, it's about ensuring that the district has a program to discuss the most significant risks and identify risk and assess risks and ensure that the risk information, the mitigation strategies around those risks that are owned by different individuals around the district, that information is coming to leadership, obviously executives and the board to make the best decisions based on the changing nature of those various risks and identifying new and emerging risks as well. As Director Bogner just indicated, we do meet quarterly now in the board risk committee to discuss those updates and then allow the board to ask any questions of the VP owners of those risks. And they obviously have the option as well to request additional expertise to understand those risks and to best perform their duties. And then outside of the direct ERM documentation, there's a number of activities around the district that obviously engage with risk information to make those best decisions. And we want to make sure that those are well coordinated activities. So with that, next slide. So here is an example of kind of how we lay out the risk program, and really it models the board committees there at the top of the page with various ERM working group committees that are chaired by different leaders around the district. And then there's at least one representative from every business unit on those committees. Those committees do meet monthly on a regular basis to discuss risks kind of within their purview. And those risk owners present their risks. The committee challenges those risk owners, challenges the assumptions, what's changing, do we have those risks appropriately ranked? And then those ultimately decide kind of where those go in our risk program, with those top levels of risk going to the board in those quarterly board risk committee meetings. We use a risk matrix approach that kind of details the different levels of risks and the different consequences that we're challenging our risk owners on. That risk matrix was updated last year, approved by ELT and made effective beginning of this year. And so we're trying to, again, continue to modify and improve the risk program as we learn more and the industry changes, and as we want to be in an even better risk program. And it's always a standing agenda item at every risk committee meeting to discuss emerging risks so that we can continue to look on the horizon of what's changing, what's coming, both at the Oppd level, the industry level, and even around the world. And so, again, I'm on the left-hand side. There's the director of the program. I work with my team, new analyst, Matt Cole, not new to the organization, but new to my team, 20-year veteran at Oppd, replacing an individual who retired last year. And yet we continue to move forward, get all of our risks reviewed on a timely basis. Next slide, please. So as I briefly mentioned, we do have 4 ERM working group committees. They meet monthly. with at least every business unit present. We discuss risks, we challenge the risk owners, and we make sure that we make the best decisions around how impactful and how likely those risks are to the district's, its mission, and our strategic goals. And then quarterly, we meet with the executive team to discuss those top 2 levels of risk. And then with the board risk committee previously last year before that committee with the in closed session to discuss that top tier risk, and really looking to make sure that at those leadership levels, we understand those most significant risks, including potential emerging risks, that the mitigation strategies for those risks are understood and appropriate and sufficient to, again, allow us to achieve the goals that we're trying to achieve here at the district. Next slide, please. So again, here's just a record of the different meetings we've had, either in closed session or more recently in the board risk committee, to show that we are meeting on a quarterly basis to discuss these risks. And really the purpose of that is to allow us to discuss, fairly sensitive risk matters and allow the, executives that own those risks to respond in detail. We have about 50 risks in our program. We've added about 5 or so in the last 12 months since the last monitoring report. We accepted or exited about 7 out of the program. So we're net down 2 from last year, but we usually are right around 50. And then they change through the different color schemes, as new risks come in, as risks get mitigated, they typically are lowered and hopefully then get exited out of the program to show that the program is dynamic, responsive to risks and changes, but trying to, flexible as new risks get entered into the program. Next slide. And so this is an example of kind of how we own those risks while I lead the program and make sure that we're all adhering to the policy and requirement of the program. It's really on, the different tiers of ownership that make this program work. So all risks are owned at the executive level, and ultimately those executives are responsible for the ownership of those risks and setting the strategy and having, frank and direct conversations with their risk owners, their direct reports, their senior leaders that report to them, that are responsible and accountable for those risks around those risks, designing and implementing mitigation steps, ensuring that we're making the progress we're trying to make, and requesting resources when more resources are needed to mitigate those risks. And then typically a number of subject matter experts support those risk owners that really are, the technical experts on those risks and monitor those risk indicators to see how those risks are changing and if any additional action is needed. And then in addition to the internal expertise around these risks, directors do have the option to request additional expertise as needed to supplement their understanding and support the review and challenge of those risks. Next slide. And so we leverage the ERM program, the risks, the understanding of those risks in a number of different corporate functions around strategic planning, resource planning, capital project prioritization. Obviously, a lot of resources go to mitigate those various risks, and we want to make sure that those dollars are optimally used, that they go to the most important risks, and that those risks that are at a lower level that may be more tolerable, that those dollars aren't overly used there. We've used a value framework to understand, the different value propositions of various risks. That includes a risk assessment, both, for mitigating kind of negative events and also looking at opportunities and how we could capture those opportunities as well. And while there's a number of examples of other recent board recommendations that have included risk-related information, I grabbed a few here to just show that risk is really woven into a number of different actions around the district. Obviously, the president and CEO emergency succession plan, while we hope we never need it, in an emergency, we want to make sure that that executive authority is clearly transferred, and so that decisions can be made at the top. And a number of our top risks, would be real emergency situations, and we want to make sure that there's stable and efficient decision making at the top of the organization. So prudent decision by the board there. The corporate operating plan that's approved every December is really an amalgamation of a number of different risks and forecasts, and trying to predict what the next year will bring, and fuel costs and load projections and the output of our generation. And there's a number of risks that impact those, or opportunities around those. And so there's a lot of activity as we make those decisions that draw upon a lot of that risk information. And then the last one there is, obviously the work that OPD accomplishes towards our mission is really because of our strong employees and the work that they do. And a number of them are governed under those labor agreements, and having stability there allows them to do their best work, allows the organization to really achieve its goals because we have that stability as well. And so that's that allows us to be a source of strength as we then try to be a resilient organization against all the other things that we cannot control. And so those are just a few examples of board actions recently that, really draw upon the risk program and help enable the risk program. Next slide, please. And so here is our recommendation that the risk committee has reviewed and accepted the monitoring report for SD 15 and hopefully recommends that the board finds it sufficiently in compliance. And then just a couple of notes on performance. Our goal is to review all of our enterprise risks within the calendar year. We did accomplish that in 24 and on schedule to do so in 25. Those most significant risks are reviewed with the executive team and the board on a quarterly basis, as we've shown. And then my team and I work to train new risk owners, new leaders, whether it's new to the organization or through promotions, to understand their requirements in the risk program. And a number of them do serve on our risk committees, and a kudos to all the executives that regularly rotate in new leaders into that program. So one, they both understand the risk program and then use that as they move forward in their careers and identify new risks and own those risks as well. And then we are continually improving the risk program and that integration into those other critical corporate processes. That. Turn it back over to you, Chair Bachmann.
All right. Board, any questions about SD 15? Any clarifying questions? Okay. Would you like to provide your perspective on SD 15?
Yes, I think this particular strategic directive is working well. I don't see a need for anything additional. I think part of it is we're discovering risks that have existed for a really long time. I think under Dan's leadership it's been fantastic for us to have the discipline to acknowledge risks that we have and discover new risks that are emerging. And so while we can't mitigate all of them, I think it's important for us to at least try to have a broader view of all the risks that we have in front of us. I would say from my perspective, something that I would like to improve in going forward, it's not the SD itself, but it's how we talk about mitigation items. Things that we know we can mitigate, how much progress are we making towards achieving that mitigation, and things that we cannot fully mitigate, just understanding have those worsened or improved. I think we have a good system today, but this is one where I'm pushing the organization to help us have a sense of progress towards those mitigation actions. And I would expect that next year we'll have a little bit more discussion about how much progress we're making on mitigation actions.
All right, thank you. So I think the next slide's reflections, certainly you guys have had a very robust risk program for a very long time. It's very well defined. I always appreciate when you walk through that one chart that kind of shows how all the different business units kind of filtered through that program. We certainly are leveling up the board's involvement in risk with the risk committee. That was an outcome of our workshop last August. And so I am curious to hear board comment and reflection on risk committee. And, is it hitting what we were striving for? Are there improvements we need to make around what we're doing at the risk committee level? And we're only 2 quarters in, so maybe it's a premature question.
Well, I'll just say that having a 2-hour meeting around risks highlights the need for us to be aware and how broad the awareness really needs to be. And so that has been helpful, and it's really appreciate the efforts that are being made on all the risk fronts to address that as best they can.
Yes, and I think I appreciate the question. What I'm wondering is the same challenge that we have with any other committee, which is to say we have really good, deep conversations in the committee before people, the extent to which that finds itself into a full board conversation is the thing that I'm kind of curious about to keep an eye on. Because to your point, like, 2 hours of robust discussion is very meaningful.
And hard to report out
and
just in a,
completely hard to report out in a public setting. So that to me is just kind of something we gotta keep an eye on.
we can take that back, sure. Look through it. Eric, you have anything?
That was.
All right. All right, if any, last call for questions around this. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
you.
And with that, the committee rests.
Awesome, thank you. We now have Director Spurgeon for Governance Committee, please.
Thank you, Chair Core. We met via WebEx on June 10th from 8 to a little after 9, following our usual opening and safety briefing and review of previous action items. We heard a legislative session recap, just kind of how everything turned out with the unicameral and where things were in the federal scene as well. We looked at the OPPD Board Chair Success Profile, which was something that was requested again at last August's board workshop. And Vice President Foch has done a great job of putting that together. This is an internal document for board members' uses and not just the chair, but for everyone to have a look at. This was run by Director Moody and has been run by legal and also by our consultants in LRI also. So there were some red line additions made. If you haven't had a chance to look at that, that is in the governance pre-committee material, diligent. We then looked at the 2025 labor agreement modification with IDEW 1483. And this is an action item and something that will be reported for us today. We heard a brief Energy Plaza update. And then item 7 was ethics reporting. I'll just say a little bit more about that. People who listen to these very gripping all committees meetings on a regular basis are familiar with the board's review of OPPD's strategic objectives, or SDs. These help, of course, guide OPPD in their work. This one on ethics is one that applies not only to staff, executive leadership, but it also applies to board members. So this is going to be an item that's going to be on every one of the governance meetings. And what is it, I am simply asked if I have received reports of unethical behavior by any board member. And that is for the record keeping of the district. And I replied this month, as I did last, I have received no such reports. So that's item 7, ethics reporting. We looked at the governance committee planning calendar to see what was on the plate yet to be accomplished from our August board meeting, essentially, and how that's going to work out. And then looked at the board's work plan. We're going to play in July and we're going to pay in August. It's going to be a long agenda there. So then looking ahead. Following a brief summary of the meeting, we adjourned. So I think now I can turn it over to.
Sorry, Director Spurgeon, can I ask, and you mentioned the Energy Plaza update. Is there, but I didn't get any.
Oh,
Is there anything that we or the public needs to know with respect to status, next steps, timing,
I'll refer
high
you.
level?
High level.
Yes.
Yes, there will be more information coming. This is as we are finalizing the process of vacating the buildings. We're already starting to think about what are we gonna do with the asset?
Yep.
How are we gonna request bids or solicitations of interest? What are the uses? What's the criteria that we're thinking about using to make a presentation to the board? The sale of Energy Plaza, as is with the sale of any asset of the district, has to be approved by the board. So this is something that will definitely come to the board. This was a good opportunity to give an update to the governance committee. I would expect in the next 6 months are going to be very active in that space, in the figuring out interests, money, terms, conditions, evaluating all that, eventually coming to the board. But again, it's just the first installment of many that will come back.
Got it. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Well, at this time, I will turn it over to Vice President Purnell to tell us about the labor agreement ratification.
Good morning, As our Director of Employee Relations, Jerry Rainey, makes his way to the front, you may remember that last month we brought to you two labor agreements for ratification, that being Local 763 and Local 31. Today, we're bringing the agreement for Local 1483 to your attention. You got that information. It's in diligence. Hopefully you had an opportunity to, at the very least, skim through it. But again, Jerry will bring you the highlights from that. And we're happy to bring that to you. This will, for us, this will retire all of our union negotiations, at least for the next 3 years. So we're happy to have completed that process. Mr. Rainey.
Thank you. Good morning. Told you I would be back hopefully this month, and that happened. So we did get agreement with 1483, as Mikkel said. I'll quickly go through, it's the same slideshow that we had last month, but I want to quickly just remind you of kind of our opportunities, goals, the approach process, and the agreement that has been sent to you, and then the results of that. So next slide, please. If you remember, I told you last month, if you weren't here, this will be new to you, but our opportunities and goals for the 2025 negotiation, we always sit down and kind of come up with the big bucket of what are we really going for in our negotiations. And for this negotiation, we came up with three, and one was competitive wages. Make sure we're competitive in the market, competing against those that we compete for talent against. Choice, as we're seeing new generations come into the workforce, what they want in a benefits package is different. And so we're adapting to that difference by offering choices in there. And then we spend a lot of time clarifying the agreement. We look over grievances, those type of things, memorandums of understanding to incorporate into this year's agreement, into this contract agreement. And so that's where we went. We updated and clarified the agreement. Next slide. The approach is two-tiered. It's collective bargaining. It's to bargain in good faith with the union. But the way that we go about that to get our proposals and goals is we review the current agreement. We go out and we talk to the organization, both management and union folks, about what they would like to see in an agreement. And then we come up with that strategy. And then we also use a cross-functional team as a negotiation team for folks that are interested in being part of the negotiation process or have things that they would like to bring. We'll also bring subject matter experts in as we see fit during the negotiation to explain things like retirement benefits, those kind of things. Next slide. And then what we were looking for, and what's in the tentative agreement, is we've agreed to wages and a 3-year contract. We've done a little bit on the health insurance piece. We added some relocation assistance. We didn't have relocation assistance for our collective bargaining folks, for our union folks. We didn't have any kind of relocation assistance, and it was putting us a little bit behind in the market on trying to get people to move here from just even our own region. But if they were greater than 50 miles out, we didn't have any kind of relocation. So we've done that. We've negotiated some post-retiree health changes with some supplemental retirement plan changes. And the other items there, meal allowances included we added a floating holiday, and then some storm provisions. And we also did some non-storm provisions, which during the collective bargaining process, we knew that we had really good storm language, but we didn't have language that as a storm was approaching or as the river was freezing, those type of things. We didn't have that type of language. And so we've incorporated that type of language into the agreement as well. Next.
Sorry, can we go back one? Can you elaborate on the classifications piece, please?
Classifications, consolidations and removals. There's been some changes in the 1483, such as transportation. Their classifications always read like transportation mechanic. More so now it reads fleet mechanic. So we've changed some of those classifications. We also had some classifications that had went away and we took them out of the book. So it's an administrative, if you remember the last contract, we kind of combined all of our administrative functions into an administrative classification. This was removing them from the book.
So it's reshaping, renaming to align better with the current workforce. It's not elimination of jobs that are part of 1483.
Absolutely not. We didn't eliminate any jobs in 1483. We may have reclassed them, but there were no elimination.
Thank you.
And Jerry, maybe you'll get into it later on, but can you elaborate on the post-retiree health changes?
Yeah, the post-retiree health changes, they fall under, post-retiree, if it was nothing more than the medical changes, in their medical form, they fall under the same medical program that, or the same insurance that current OPPD does. And so whatever we change on the OPPD is that we change on the retiree side as well.
Supplemental
There
retirement.
was no specific agreements for retirees, no.
Supplemental retirement.
And the supplemental retirement, that is, supplemental retirement is clarification of the annuities that you can buy under a cash balance program. Those, it was more clarification.
Housekeeping kind of thing. Thank you.
I'll just ask, kind of building on Director Moody's question, but maybe the flip side, were any additional departments or groups of employees added to 1483 during this process?
There was some clarification and some adjustments that were made to current classifications, but there was nothing added. We wouldn't add anything typically during the big negotiations because we do those as that need shows up in the organization. If there was a need that shows up, the one thing that we did do is we have a reopener clause in this contract for the DSOs, the dispatching piece. They have asked for representation. We couldn't get that done during this negotiation, so we have a reopener clause on it. So it was more about, hey, we'll talk about that later, but let's not let this hold up a contract because it's a new classification that wants representation.
Okay. Maybe not right now, but I'd like clarity on what that process looks like for, how you're going to move that conversation forward, to evaluate if those employees that are asking for representation can be included here.
Sure.
Yeah, I agree.
I just want to compliment you on the reopener clause. I thought that was a great addition to have to a contract where you agree on what you're going to agree on, set that aside, and then say, okay, we'll talk about this more later. To your point of not holding up all the negotiations for one. So appreciate that. Thank you.
They tend to be long, and that's why we do a reopener clause. They tend to be a little longer when you're asking for representation. So. Excellent. So I would say we believe that we did meet our negotiation stated goals and your approval of the requested 1583 contract. Any other questions?
So same question as last month. I'm thinking about relation to our strategic directive. Strategic directive calls for these negotiations to happen in good faith. Could you generally characterize the nature of the negotiations for us?
Yeah, I'll say the same thing that I said last month, that, we negotiated in good faith. That doesn't mean that you agree to everything. You see that in the reopener clause, right? That's an indicator of things that you probably just couldn't come to agreement on sitting in a room. But at the end of the day, overwhelmingly, the contracts that we offered, voted on by the employees, they have approved those. And so I would say the negotiated in good faith piece, we did our part. I think the unions did their part where we couldn't agree. We've agreed to reopen if we need to in the future, and continue to talk about those things.
Okay.
So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you ask me or you ask a union president, did we bargain in good faith? Absolutely. We addressed everything that wanted to be addressed in the moon. Did we agree on everything? We never do.
We reached agreements, so I guess.
We reached agreement. Yeah, so, sometimes sometimes you can't give everything. Sometimes you can move a little bit. And I think we moved towards them a little bit and they moved towards us a little bit. And that's
To your point, the members have already voted, right?
absolutely, they have voted they have voted, they voted in the affirmative. And so.
Any questions? Seeing none, hearing none, or this will be an action item for Thursday evening's meeting. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Back to you, Chair Core.
Thank you. Now we're to Director Howard for Customer and Public Engagement.
So the Customer and Public Engagement Committee met on June 9th. We had our safety briefing, and then we had our customer growth update, which we covered in our closed session. We also had a legislative session recap and an Energy Plaza update as well. Today we're bringing to you the legislative session recap, and so I will hand it over to Tim.
Thank you, Director Howard. I will call forward Mr. Seth Boyles. We'll go through the legislative update. This one will take the flavor of the legislative session having wrapped. So Seth will profile bills of interest that we tracked and were engaged with, as well as some interim steps that we might anticipate being involved in through the summer months and up until next session. Seth, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Good morning, everybody. Kind of the agenda we're going to go through exactly like Tim said, and then we'll save some time for the federal update since we have some updates that just came out yesterday afternoon. So, all right. So, session's over. Thank God. 715 bills were introduced, 18 constitutional amendments, over 1,600 amendments, 845 fiscal notes. It was a busy session. But I will say it was a good session for OPPD and public power. 204 bills passed with 113 other bills amended into those. So stuff got accomplished. There were some lowlights, some highlights. It wasn't a bad session for anyone going around. I think there was the new freshman class has some things they're going to improve upon, and I think we'll see where all that's going to go. But very active session for all of us, and we were down there every day making sure that everything was good, because sometimes things can come up at the last minute that you got to address. So, next slide, please. These are some of the things that we had on here. So, we maintain OPD's authorities and abilities on pole attachments and easements. This is a bill that came up in 311 in the Transportation and Telecommunications Committee. There was a provision in there that kind of made it look like that we couldn't have our pole attachment agreements and master agreements on some of those things. We're able to work that out. Defended our interest for our arbor line in LB 175, and that was wrapped into LB 398. We achieved exemptions protections for the purchase of our drones in LB 660. We're going to address that over the interim as well. So like I said, we were very active on a lot of things that were going forward. We defended against expanded jurisdiction of the Power Review Board and on other foreign adversary issues. Foreign adversary stuff, it seems like it's the theme of the country right now, trying to restrict as much as you can. And then we advocated for public power on the nameplate capacity taxes on LB 468, and we helped develop and mitigate issues on crypto mining operations on 526. This is kind of the main part here on the flavor of what we've been kind of up to down there. A lot of this takes a lot of time, a lot of meetings, a lot of negotiations, and making sure the language is where it's supposed to be. But that's a lot. Most times if you have 5 or 6 bills you're working on, we took positions on 15, and we probably worked on another 50. So it's a lot of stuff going on. Next slide, please. These are the carryover ones. We still got to address LB 413. This is an NPPD bill about the rate setting, not unduly discriminatory instead of just discriminatory. LB 489 is prohibiting investor-owned utilities owning transmission lines. We're going to figure out those languages there over the interim to see where we can get to. And LB 546 is a Senator Roundtree bill on our NEMA changes to make sure we can address ice jams in a more timely manner under certain conditions. So we're hoping we can get these 3 kind of fleshed out over the interim and see where we're gonna go. I always tell everyone, anytime we introduce a bill on something, it's a 2-year process probably. If we're able to get in the first year, it's great. But if not, we always have a second year to try to come back and figure out where it's gonna go. So those are 3 of the ones we're gonna be working on over the interim. And then we have 3 more that we still have to address. So next slide, please. So the main 2 on the top, those are the energy storage bills. Again, we support energy storage across the board, those kind of things. But these we had some owners provisions on standalone that we just couldn't let go. So we're still trying on some of these, but we'll get there. And then the last one on LB 571 is on the COLA adjustment. We've talked to the bill sponsor several times. Everyone understands it's a cost issue on this one of what a COLA would be every year. It's $45 million a year, so it's a lot. So, still talking about all this stuff, but on the last one, I want to make sure that and reiterate. So during the hearing, we really said what, our employees are our biggest asset, and that's what it is, because that's what we really are. But and that helped with that stuff. And Senator John Kavanaugh was okay with where we were. So next slide. I think that might be. All right, the interim studies. So we have, I think we're tracking about 15. These are the main ones here. One's on the nameplate capacity tax. Senator Sanders is one on Open Meetings Act. This one is about the newspaper the press association's trying to figure out how they're going to do some of their advertising. There's a provision in the law that says you have to do it in physical papers, since those are kind of going away. They're coming to the table to work on those. One on 223 is just a jurisdiction of the Natural Resource Committee. We have heard that this one's going to be about, they're kind of framing it as representation or taxation without representation. There's certain public power utilities that may not have a board member linked to where they are, so they may not vote on a board member. So that's where this is probably going to go. Then LR 225, this is on the Green Amendment to the Constitution. Senator Duncan had that. They're going to do that. The Natural Resource Committee got 6 total. They're going to do all 6, all hearings. That usually doesn't happen on some of these committees, but we'll figure out where those are going to go. Like I said, we're going to work on all these ones here. Next slide, please. These are the other ones we're going to look at. 233 is on guidance documents. Just going to examine that a little bit. 234 is the one on net zero plans and goals of public power utilities. LR 250 is on by Senator Anderson on drone purchasing. This is specifically on our provision with NERC SIP standards. When I talked to committee counsel and his staff, what it was is as long as we meet with him over the interim to try to improve his bill that passed, kind of tweak it where we can, they won't do this hearing. So LR 257 is Senator Bostar's examining foreign and domestic threats to Nebraska agriculture. The reason we have that on there is because there's also critical infrastructure in there. So we're just going to make sure and see what that's going to be happening. And LR 260 by Senator Dover is it's an economic development one on the business incentives. We have heard this one is specific to data centers and investment per kilowatt hour for how that sets up, to see what information they can get out of there to see how that's going to go. But I'm going to keep an eye on all those. But these are the big ones. Main one for all of us in the utilities is going to be 234. It's going to have a hearing. From what I've heard from the chairman and staff, is that it's going to be invitation only for all 6 that they're doing. They don't want these to go all day or those kind of things. They'll start in September and they'll try to get them done as quick as they can. Those are the interim studies. Any questions on these or on the state stuff there? All right, next slide. On the federal side. So this part here is mainly about what was in the House, tax and financing, all the things we're kind of looking at. We did a lot of interest in the House. We did a lot of advocacy in the House getting those things done. We've done that in the Senate as well, but now it's really starting to hit in the Senate. Water adjustment taxes, luckily, they're not any of those, but the IRA, IIJA things have really hit. The Senate Finance Committee released their text late afternoon yesterday. 549 pages of text. Their summary's 48 pages on its own. Let me give you some of the things that have been highlighted on Medicaid. It takes the tax from 6% down to 3.5%. So states will have to pay more. Highly controversial, probably not gonna sit there. The clean energy issues that we have had, these are just from a quick read on some of the summaries we've been getting. And everyone right now is going through all these, reviewing everything. They're removing the 60-day threshold pushed by the House to begin construction for clean electricity projects. And they modify the timelines to get them up and running. But the Senate is prioritizing extending phase-out timelines for credits benefiting baseload energy technologies for nuclear, geothermal, and hydropower. On the clean energy stuff, they're largely repealing the tax credits for electric vehicles by the end of the year, phasing out tax credits for wind and solar projects that begin construction by 2026 before fully eliminating those in 2028. Under the Senate text, solar and wind facilities would receive 20% of the credits so I think it's 60% 2026, 20% in 2027, and nothing after 2028. They're restricting access for companies with ties or receive material assistance from foreign entities of concern. Yeah, it's everywhere. It's a lot. On the state and local tax deduction, this is the big one for the House. House had it at $40,000, so that's kind of a bright line for the House. Senate's bill came out, was back to 10, which is current law. So that will change. It's supposed to be a placeholder, but that will move up rather than down because it just can't pass without that. They've got stuff here on universities and private foundations. It's a lot. They're also upping the debt limit by $1 trillion, I think is what it is, versus the House that did 4 or 5. There's some issues that we have with public power specifically that everyone's jumping on right now. On elective pay tax credits, they have some parts in there that will, let me read this. There's a certain section that phase out restrictions on clean energy production credit. Section would repeal 2 key statutory exceptions to the domestic content requirements for claiming elective pay tax credits, the increased cost and availability of exceptions. That hits us pretty hard. So APPA, LPPC, everyone out, all the stakeholders out there are contacting offices now. We're all contacting our Senate offices too to see if we can get that stuff back in.
This is probably the single biggest barrier for public power entities to access direct pay credits from the IRA is the domestic content provision. It's just impossible for utilities to enter into a contract and assure that every single piece of the project is going to be American produced. Because if we violate that for whatever reason, the supply chain dries up and we can't complete the project, then we lose a tax exemption on the financing for that project. And so we're trying to say, hey, we support American bought, we support domestic content, but we need the same flexibility that the private sector is getting, but we're not getting. So this is very important.
And it's mainly about public power because I think the investor-owned utilities, if they lose it, they lose a 10% adder, right? Which is, it's just different for us. So yeah, this is where we are on those things so far. The bill will change for sure because if they can, I don't think they can pass this in its current form in the Senate. They're actually, what time is it? They're going to be meeting in about 40 minutes with the Republican conference to talk about the changes. As it is now, things have to change, but the issue is I don't know if it'll change. It'll go more toward the House bill is my prediction than the other way. So we'll see where that's going to go. We're going to try everything we can to fix what we can, but it's going to be tough sledding on some of these things. The one light funding, president's budget eliminates it. A lot of president's budgets eliminate it. Congress always puts it back in. Most times we do our budgets by congressional, by CR. So it goes back to last year's funding with a little bit of an increase. So we're not too worried about that. Tariffs are still big. If they're on, if they're not, if they're repealed back, they're pushed forward, who knows? And then the last one that we have on here that's big for us is FEMA. So once the administration came into office, there was a push to eliminate it, and a push to kind of make it more efficient, pull certain things back. Everyone got together and started pushing, like making sure that they understood how essential FEMA is. And now they've asked for the biggest budget increase for FEMA in decades. So it's, one side up the other, and who knows what's gonna happen here, but we're pushing to make sure that FEMA stays, their core mission stays intact. There are some efficiencies they can make. You know, getting reimbursed on a 3-year basis that could be sped up, improved. Those kind of things there's certain things you can do to do that, but we don't want to make sure that they go after the core function of what FEMA does, because it's vital to everyone on storm recovery and everything else. So for all those, that's the fun part in the Senate. The language came out yesterday. They're probably going to mark it up next week. That's what they're going to try to do. They at least try to get it moving to the floor. It's I think the July 4th deadline is going to slip because the negotiations are going to have to be a little bit bigger now for Medicaid issues and those kind of things. Some of the senators have come out, Republican and conservative senators have come out and said there's no way this will ever pass. And then they still may try to cut more funding wherever else they can. So we think that'll slip a little bit, but then the issue is going to be they're still going to try to get it out before the August recess into the House and enact it before then. The debt ceiling was the real driver for getting it done by August, but apparently now they have a little bit more time. I could bleed over into September a little bit, but I don't think anyone wants to let this hang any later than August, the first part of August. So it'll be fast and furious, but we're going to do whatever we can to advocate for the provisions that are important to us. So any questions?
Generally-
Real quickly.
Yeah, thank you. So generally speaking, last month when we were here talking about this, I think y'all described most of what was in headwinds for us. Has anything changed? Or for the most part, this is gonna make our work?
It has a potential of making our work more expensive.
Okay.
And the credits are going away or they're making it harder to get. Not a lot of tailwinds, so to speak. There was some concessions on nuclear. It's basically preserving what we had before. And it's not necessarily improving upon the things that we had before. Generally speaking, I would say.
Yeah, they made some adjustments to the PTC as well, which I know some of the nuclear industry is concerned about as well. They're trying to drive those costs down and make sure that's a future energy source, but there's only a limit how some of the fiscal hawks that are out there don't like any of these subsidies for anything. So, but yeah, it will get, as Javier said, I think it could potentially get more expensive for sure. But you know, with everything else going on in DC too, it's a lot that they're all trying to juggle right now. Any other questions?
We rest, Director Howard. Thank you.
We're good. No questions.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
All right, thank you. Now to Director Moody for the Finance Chair report.
Chugging along, in front of you is the agenda from our June 6th Finance Pre-Committee meeting. Once again, a dense agenda, pretty consistent with what we're all experiencing. A few things to note here. Agenda item number 3, the committee received an update on various organization-wide cost savings initiatives. So some bullet points for you, and there's a deck if you're interested in diligent for you to dig in deeper. Through April, the team has achieved $27 million in O&M savings and $13 million in capital savings. So that totals up to $40 million as a reminder. Target that we're endeavoring to hit is a $60 million. So really, really good work to date. And one of the things that was named as we talked is, you know, the further deeper we get into the year, the harder it is to squeeze out more, right? So we did have some good conversations, and the team also shared with us some perspective on some of the inflationary pressures that the district is seeing. So pretty substantial percentage 5-year increases as it relates to transformers, underground distribution cables. There were several examples cited. So the inflationary pressures are very, very real. And as we grow, those are going to continue to push costs up over time. We also had, the committee did also ask some questions about, okay, we have this goal, we're working towards this goal. what are the implications? What are the impacts on the utility, on our customer owners? So we had a really fruitful conversation, I would describe it as an eyes wide open conversation about the fact that, as we continue to make some of these cuts, of note, a lot of the sustained dollars, so to speak, the way in which we were investing in sustaining our infrastructure, our system, the amount of dollars that we're putting towards that are going down. So there are some obvious implications of that that we're going to need to keep our eyes on. So all in all, I think the committee really appreciated the update and yet, we want to maintain a holistic perspective on how the district is moving forward. Item 4, we're going to get here in a moment. Same for 5, same for 6, same for 7. The last one that I will talk about in the chair's report is item number 8. So you all should have on your schedules some workshops, so rates 101 and 201. And so the committee really was interested in like a just quick synopsis of, okay, what do we have in front of us and why are we doing this? So I'm actually just going to read a little bit from the deck that we received summarizing the purpose. So these are educational sessions where robust discussion can occur to equip the board of directors with a comprehensive understanding of OPPD statutory requirements, rate setting processes, and financial implications. These sessions aim to enhance the board's ability to make informed decisions by providing foundational knowledge on revenue requirements, rate structures, cost of service principles, and customer impacts while delving deeper into advanced topics such as rate design, strategies, time varying rates, and emerging issues affecting OPPD. So we're getting a deep dive. And I'll say as the chair of the committee, I'm really pleased that we're doing this. And the way in which we set rates is a really, really important thing that we as a board do. And it's important that we understand in a pretty meaningful, deep way, the manner in which we arrive at those rates. So I know mine is on Monday, so I'm looking forward to my one-on-one. I know I'll see several of you there, but these will be good sessions for us to learn a lot and to ask a lot of questions. So I encourage you to come sufficiently caffeinated and ready to go.
My team tells me it'll be riveting.
Riveting. That's all I'm going to cover in the chair's report. The rest of it is going to be on our agenda as we go through today. So let's jump in.
Chairman, we have with us today Tim Vasquez. He's our supervisor of financial operation. He's going to walk us through a transaction here that we would affectionately call the separate system debt. And so this here is a request to the governing body who allows us to issue and refinance debt for the system, the separate system, to get approval to go do so. And so we'll talk a little bit about the fundamentals of the separate system and why we're doing this, and we'll have a good discussion. So Mr. Vasquez, I'll turn it over.
Thanks, Brad. Since we don't do separate system financing very often, we thought it'd be good to give a little level set, brief overview of what separate system is. It has some nuances. So I'll harken you back to 2004. We had a participant agreement signed with the 7 participants at NC2. And the agreement, generally speaking, is they get half the output from NC2, but they have to provide half the costs for NC2 that included constructing NC2 at the time. So we offered to them the issuance of these separate system bonds back in 2005, 2006, 2008. That debt then covered the participants' cost of constructing NC2, and then the bonds would be secured by the revenues of the participants, not of OPPD. So it's a separate system. 2009 is when NC2 started, and then in 2015-16 was when we could first refinance those original separate system bonds. It's now 2025, so we have another chance to refund those separate system bonds, and then I'll see you again in 2035. All right, next slide. So another nuance of the separate system, we gave all participants a chance to fund their own portion with cash or to be a part of the separate system bonds. 2 of them chose to bring cash, those are the ones on the right, And then the other 5 chose to be a part of the bond financing, separate system bonds. So it's a little nuance that these 5 will get the benefit of this separate system refinancing, but all 7 participants will be involved. We need to get information from all of them because they are all part of the separate system that is securing those bonds. All right, next slide, please. So this general time frame, we're here in June to get your authorization to go to the market to do the refinancing. Then we'll begin engaging all 7 of those participants, letting them know the time frame that we'd like to go through the refinancing. Everybody's going to have to provide some information for us, even if they are involved in the refinancing. And then we also want to give them a chance once again to self-fund if they would like to not be a part of the transaction anymore going forward. The total amount between the 2 2015 and 2016 bonds is $183 million. We'd like to combine them at this time, take them once to the market. The separate system is a little confusing in the marketplace because our name's kind of behind it, but we're not really a part of it. So going once with one larger transaction, we think would be a little more strategic for us. Time frame, they are callable, all bonds callable in November of 2025. So really that's the first moment that we'll go for it. We will, we treat these bonds as OPPD financing from a standpoint of a stewardship standpoint. So we'll look for when the time seems right from that point forward. And at one point in time, the potential savings is $10 million, 9%. Market's been a little jittery lately, so that it tends to go up and down. We will do the same process that OPPD does, watch for when it seems to be most optimal to take advantage of it. Hopefully those are the savings we'll see. We won't do it if it doesn't reach the thresholds that we're used to accomplishing on our refinancing. And then once again, all costs of this refinancing are paid by the participants, those 5 that are actually involved in the finance.
The earliest you could do it's November.
November.
Is there an outer limit where it's too late to do it?
Well, no, I'd say at some point the economics might not work for you, but you can literally do it at any time after that call date.
So even though you're shepherding this, our credit rating really isn't associated with this refinancing opportunity.
Right, and some of the nuance is that people see the OPPD name and think that it's our credit, but really it's a little bit lower than our credit. So last time we went to the market, we had a lot of people that said, you know, no on credit. I'm like, what does no on credit mean? And that's because they thought it was our credit and not the separate system credit.
I think to clarify these, all the documentation, the offering documents, all are very clear about what is it, right? And there is actually a separate credit rating for these papers, which, as Tim said, it's lower than ours, and that's how we offer it into the market.
We try to overabundantly share, but this is the separate system. But you have people that still don't realize it as they come to market, and then that comes out during the sale.
Quickly, just because we just talked about legislative update, this is something that happened a few years ago, where we used to be able to refinance these type of bonds at any time, basically with a tool that was called the advanced refunding. So if 5 years ago market conditions were good, we could have refinanced these bonds and achieved savings. That was taken away by Congress. We currently don't have the opportunity to do an advanced refunding. So what happens here is we have to wait until we're within striking distance of that call date. That's the only time we have, starting at that point and going forward, to refinance that. So it limits our ability to achieve savings. And that's one that ideally at some point, if Congress gets, if we get the opportunity, public power entities, we're looking at restoring that advanced refunding. But for now, we're limited to these dates.
Something worth noting is OPPD has very, very good credit. So when people come to the board, to the table, you know, they see that it's not our credit. It gives you a feel for how high our credit rating actually is. That this is still a pretty good credit, but people still, that's not what I'm looking for. So I just think it's worth noting to this group that is a part of this regular discussion. We have very, very good credit at OPPD.
Are there any risks that we assume as a result of this?
We would feel not. Probably my management might talk a little bit about some of the nuances of the risk, but really this is all the separate system credit.
Yeah, there's reputational risk.
Sure.
Right? very clearly, if any of these participants default and there's a default on the bonds, you know, the legal document says one thing and we would be isolated from that, but the reputation carries. So I think that's important, and we have a really good relationship with participants. We have annual meetings with them. We are in constant communication with them. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that reputational risk.
Yeah, that's good to know. So, lots of work. We don't bear any of the costs. The caveat to that would be you're spending a lot of time, and that's not.
Part time, we have a mechanism to charge that back to the participants, so this will be a part of the cost of the refinance. But
Great.
we would like to say very unequivocally, this is not at a cost to OPD.
No direct benefit to us, which maybe is where you.
Also true.
Yep. Okay, any last questions, colleagues? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, the next two items for us are two items that we saw a month ago got teed up, and we were waiting for some public input on what our next steps are going to be. So that's what we're going to.
Thank you. So we have Beth Hoyle, our Director of Financial Planning and Analysis, coming to facilitate the discussion today. Two items, as you noted, Dr. Moody. One is on the AMI opt-out charge. We're asking that the board approve if customers so choose to do so. And the other is the declining block revision. And so primarily the update today is on customer feedback. And so we've had an open comment period, and Ms. Hoyle, how would we discuss that at this point?
Yeah, thank you. So for AMI opt-out, just to kind of recap what we went over in May, currently OPPD has automated meter reads in the field that are one-way communication. And when we installed these meters, we provided the option to our customers to keep a non-communicating meter to provide flexibility. Since we are transitioning to advanced meter reading infrastructure or AMI meters starting this fall, we want to provide that same customer flexibility. Next slide. So there are two fees associated with recovering the additional costs for these non-communicating meters. Rider 470 is an existing fee. We're proposing just kind of a name change to monthly meter reading charge for non-communicating meters. This fee is currently $50 a month and will remain $50 a month for those incremental meter reading costs. And then 470N is a new charge. This is a non-AMI meter installation charge. This is an upfront charge of $220. And the main component of the $220 is the cost of the meter and the meter installation cost, since we do have to purchase new non-communicating meters. Next slide is going over kind of just the recap of the customer outreach timeline. This rate action was communicated with the public via announcement in the all committee meeting, the board press release, OPPD social media on oppd.com, and OPPD Community Connect. We've gathered feedback through multiple channels over the last month. If approved, the charges will be effective October 1st of this year. In the next slide, so the customer feedback that we did receive was kind of mixed across the board. There were 6 total comments on OPPD Community Connect and 20 comments on social media. There was support of the program as well as some questions on the security and the cost, but overall not a lot of interest in the topic and little feedback. And I'll pause for questions or comments on that.
Can you describe a little bit the sentiment or the theme around wanting to report the meters themselves? Help me understand what's being asked there.
If they call in their own meter read, could we decrease the charge? That was, I think, the sentiment of that.
Okay.
You are ordered new meters, I assume, because just end of life, the current ones.
Yep.
So they'll be up with the AMI.
In short, we heard very little.
Okay. Yes, correct. Okay. Moving on to the declining block removal. And so the next board action will be on removing the declining block rate structure and the energy management credit. And so again, just to recap, going through the history of declining blocks, it's a legacy rate structure from the 50s and 60s that was used to incentivize electrification, offering lower kWh prices for higher usage. Declining blocks are less prevalent than in the past, mainly because the price signal that declining block sends could encourage increased consumption, which is not favorable in our time of rising energy costs and conservation efforts. Next slide. The rationale for removal, the market is continuing to evolve and change, and now there's a more diverse mix of generation across the Southwest power pool, and we're experiencing large swings in energy prices year round now. Historically, our top highest priced hours have been during the summer months, and now that's kind of switched to over the last 3 years, about 55 of the highest priced hours occurred in the non-summer months. We're also seeing changes to the planning reserve margin. SPP is changing, and it really removes the distinction between the summer and winter months for capacity planning. And so overall, the message that we're sending with declining blocks is inaccurate and no longer in line with industry best practices. Next slide, the bill impact overview. Again, this is a revenue neutral change, so there will be customers that will experience a bill decrease and customers that will experience a bill increase. Higher use customers will see higher bill increases, where low and average use customers will see a bill decrease. The majority of both residential and commercial customers will see a bill decrease. However, there will be about 1,500 residential customers and 400 commercial customers that will see a bill increase of over 5%. Next slide. Next piece of the board action is removing the energy management credit, which is available to residential customers only. Our rates 110 and rate 115 have an energy management credit, which is a credit of $2.07 per month that is applied if customers use between 100 and 401 kWh during the summer months. This credit's been in place since the 1990s and was put in to promote energy efficiency. However, there isn't justification in our cost of service study, so the recommendation is to remove it. Next slide. Again, multiple channels were used for customers to provide feedback over the last 30 days. The feedback period did close on Sunday, June 15th. If approved, the residential rates will be effective October 1st of this year, and the commercial rates will be effective January 1st of 2026. And then for feedback on the declining blocks and energy management credit, there were 3 comments on Oppd Community Connect, around 20 on social media again, and then about 6 comments from our small, medium, commercial, and industrial customers. Not a lot of interest, again, in engagement on the topic. Our commercial customers were appreciated the information for their budgeting purposes, and all around the main concerns were on the increase to bills. And again, I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Any questions? These will vote the action items on Thursday. Yes, please. Good.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
I think the statement on the rationale for removal of the declining blocks is in the bold statement. They serve their purpose during a different energy era, and they should be eliminated in favor of flat or preferably time-based rates. So they were good for that time, and now something else is needed.
Well said. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Okay, we are now on to our monitor report for SD2. Committee did just kind of a quick review, questions, but didn't do a deep dive in the committee meeting and aligned on the recommendations. So today for Finance Committee as well as the full board itself is an opportunity for us to really kind of ask the questions that we've got in our mind. So looking forward to the report.
Yeah, SD2 always an important discussion for the board and leadership team. I think we've got some really good things working here and some competitiveness information, as well as energy burdens and what's the impact on community members relative to their ability to pay their electric. So Beth, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. So SD2 ensures that Oppd provides affordable energy services and sets rates in order to achieve the long-term vision of the organization. So as a reminder, SD2 is a lagging metric. So the data we'll be showing today is based on final data from 2023. In implementing this directive, there are several goals established, including maintain fair, reasonable, and non-discriminatory rates, equitably assign costs across and within all customer classes, monitor affordability indicators, pursue rate process and structure changes to reflect the cost of energy when it's used, offer flexibility and options, be simple and easy to understand, and then pursue a directional rate target of 10% below the published rates within the North Central region on a system average basis. And with that, we'll proceed with updates to these items. So for directional target, as mentioned, we have kind of the newer North Central definition, which includes 7 states. And the comparison is done on a system average basis and measured in cents per kWh. And we use data from the Energy Information Administration. OPPD experienced a modest 2.9% increase in 2023. That was through our fuel and purchase power adjustment. And you'll see in the report that we are continuing to meet our directional goal of 10% below our regional average in 2023. A couple items to note in the upcoming slides is some states saw significant increases in 2022, followed by decreases in 2023. Those states are Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri, and Nebraska, as well as South Dakota, had smaller increases in both 22 and 23. And I'll go through those in more detail on the upcoming slides.
And if you remember, what happened in 2021 was very important here. The polar vortex sequence from Uri that probably caused that peak in 2022. Sorry, did I steal your thunder?
Oh, but it's all right.
Sorry.
All right, so the next slide, we need an item to note on the report that has an impact on our commercial and on our industrial metrics. The Energy Information Administration changed their reporting criteria starting with 2023 data. So starting in 2023, EIA created a requirement that data centers and crypto customers be reported in the commercial class. And so we have followed EIA reporting criteria for the SD2 report. However, for the purpose of OPPD's internal and other external reporting, the data centers and crypto customers will remain in their respective rate classes. All right, next slide. So average rates for all rate classes. OPPD is the solid black line, and remember this is 2023 information. For all rate classes, OPPD is at 9.21 cents per kWh, which is 15.8% below the regional average. This is down a little bit from 2022, where we were at 16.2% below. However, in 2023, we are at 27.4% below the national average, which is up from 2022, where we're at 25.5% below. As I mentioned previously, we saw some states with large increases in 2022 that are now showing decreases in 2023. Overall, across the region, electricity prices and policies have been shaped by shifting energy sources, infrastructure, investments, and market fluctuations. So in 2022, electricity price increases were due to higher fuel costs caused by extreme weather from 2021 and inflation, but then they dropped in 2023 where fuel and purchase price is decreased. And so what I take away from this graph is utilities are facing the same challenges: investing in new generation, retiring generation, grid modernization, inflation, and extreme volatility in fuel and purchase power. But OPPD is raising rates in a very intentional way to avoid these large swings from year to year. And I think that that is going to continue through the next 3 years of this report, just based on what we're seeing as far as rate increases in our region over the last few years. Next slide. So the next slides will show the average for each customer class. So for our residential rates, OPPD is at 12.02 cents per kWh and 14% below the regional average. This is down a little bit from 14.9% in 2022, and we're showing at 24.9% below the national average. Next slide. For our commercial rates, OPPD is at 8.45 cents per kWh or 22.2% below the regional average. Again, the comparison is done on a system average basis, which is total revenue divided by total kWh. And so the change in the requirement from EIA on data centers and crypto customers now being included in the reporting for the commercial class. And this is the cause of why you're seeing a decrease in the cents per kWh from 22 to 23. Next slide for our industrial rates. OPPD is at 6.94 cents per kWh and 11.6% below the regional average and 13.6% below the national average. Again, due to the change from EIA, this increased the cents per kWh from 22 to 23. Next slide. This is a new slide that we added this year, just a 10-year historical view of where we've been compared to the regional and national average. one item to note is that we did change the region that we compared ourselves to, starting in 2022, which is why you see that larger change from 21 to 22. Next slide. Moving to the next goal, which is fair, reasonable, non-discriminatory. We perform the cost of service study to align rates with cost drivers. The rate setting process is reviewed by our rate consultant, which is the Brattle Group. We also want to highlight as we implement and plan for future changes that have been outlined in the rate design project. We are continuing to implement the recommendation from Brattle's assessment of our current rates and riders. And then we're also developing the plan to leverage AMI-based technology to offer more opportunities for customers and to also continue to better align rates with our cost drivers. Next slide is cost assignment across and within customer classes. This slide just provides some context for the assignment and recovery of costs based on the technology available. The three components of rates is your demand, energy, and customer costs. We currently offer the two-part rate for our small commercial and residential customers to recover the demand costs, and then the three-part rate structure for our industrial customers. The next couple slides will speak to affordability indicators. So now we're changing, looking at cents per kWh and translating that into the average residential bill. Average residential bill remained relatively the same from 22 to 23, going from $110.24 to $109.67, which is a 0.5% decrease. We are showing this year, or in 2023, at 6.2% below the regional average, which is down from 10.1% below in 22, again, to the decreases that some utilities experienced in 2023. Next slide. Here we show our electricity burden, which is the average electric bill divided by the annual income, and it's continuing to decline into 2023. In 2022, our average electricity burden was 1.67%, and in 2023, it's at 1.57%. So on average, our customers' income is growing faster than our rate increases. On the right, we show the energy assistance payments each year. This has decreased in the past few years. So we are continuing to be proactive to ensure that we're helping our customers connect with the right resources to assist with their electric bills. Next slide. And these two, this slide just kind of shows more detail at the zip code level. So even though our average electricity burden is decreasing, we do want to note that individual customer electricity burdens can be above or below the average, and this varies throughout our service territory and is impacted by the population within each zip code, a customer's heating source, and the efficiency of the premise. And so on the map on the left, we show percent of customers with 3 or more disconnect notices in 2023. And on the right, we show the electricity burden by zip code. The zip codes in blue have electricity burdens that are below our average of 1.57%, and those that are tan to darker orange have the higher than average electricity burdens. Next slide. This slide highlights some of the customer offerings that we provide to our customers with our rates and our riders and rate offerings. This flexibility will continue to expand as we move into the future with more advanced meter technology. Next slide. For the cost of energy when it's used, we charge our customers either seasonally through summer and non-summer energy charges, through the pass-through mechanism of the fuel and purchase power adjustment, our 261M market energy rate, and then again, acknowledging that we're going to continue to evaluate more advanced rate structures with the capability of new technology through AMI. Next slide. And lastly, for simple and easy to understand, with each rate action, we continue to engage with broad communication with customers and target specific messaging for individual rate classes. We continue to provide customers with more detailed explanations around the drivers of the rate increases and provide customers an opportunity to have conversations with Oppd and provide their feedback. And then we do have the rate fundamental report, which is on our website, which details how rates are determined, designed, and set to meet our annual revenue requirement. Next slide. And with that, I'll open it up for questions or comments.
Okay, so thank you very much, Beth. Well done. Committee reviewed and aligned on district being sufficiently in compliance with board policy SD2. So this is the monitor report that demonstrates compliance. Comments, questions, thoughts on the report as presented?
It's always a little frustrating that we're looking back to 2023. Remind us on the EIA website when the 2024 data becomes like official.
It'll be official in October of this year.
There is already preliminary data.
Yeah.
But the official data. I share your frustration.
Yeah, it just feels a little, 2 years in the rear view is a little rough.
Yeah, I appreciate all the information, especially when we translate both the relative cost by sector over to the affordability, particularly in the residential sector. I'm glad to see that that continues to trend. I know that averages can sometimes hide outliers who are have disproportionate impacts. So I guess one couple particularly with the map by zip code of the disconnect notice and the electric burden zip code, I guess I would reaffirm, as previously during this report, concern about the extreme concentration of dark orange and red in Northeast Omaha in my district, especially when looking at the map. This is a percentage-based map, and it does not also then overlay the population density, where there are significantly more people in the metro area than there are in the rural area. So compounding the number of people who have 3 or more disconnect notices and a higher energy burden. And that gives me ongoing concern. When we talk about rate structures, both the updates that are recommended for this month, which I support, and future rate structures, I guess I am glad to hear that we are continuing to focus on recognizing the relatively small number of people who have a disproportionately high energy burden. And I hope that we continue to do additional customer outreach on those programs and continue to recall that averages, again, are good with the trend down in the electric burden for customers in the residential sector, but averages can leave a not insignificant number of people kind of hidden from that math. So something I've mentioned in the past, I'm glad that we continue to focus on it. I appreciate the way this is presented, and I look forward to additional programs and ways that we can find those people and work to reduce the energy burden, which is, quite frankly, hyper concentrated in some areas and not in other areas.
Thank you, Director Williams. Other comments, questions?
Yeah, do you have an idea on the amount of disconnects instead of notices?
Great.
Question?
Thanks. Amount of disconnects versus, we've got a representation of how many notices were given. Do you have an idea on how many disconnections happen?
Yeah, so relative to the, to the disconnections compared to disconnect notices, it is approximately 1%, but we'll follow up with the exact number for you. So when you look in comparison to the amount of disconnect notices and the amount of disconnects we actually execute on in a year, but we'll follow up with the actual number.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Director Core. Other comments, questions?
I'll just give accolades. I mean, the district works very hard to use money wisely, because these rates are what our customers experience. And, to be 20 plus, in some cases 30% below a national average is incredible. And so I just wanted to highlight that and celebrate that. It is not without fight and work and effort. So thank you.
Yeah, so we don't have, I was just checking the deck, unless there's something hiding in there that I don't see. We don't have the reflection slide. So transitioning to that, there it is. I just don't have it, my diligent. Thank you. I want to invite you in as well to offer any thoughts, comments that you might have, but other reflections on what's accomplished, challenges, strategic implications.
I'll just mention for our newest board member that when we say the North Central region, that used to be a lot more states. We a few years ago said, let's just take the states that are in our latitude, essentially. Instead of including North Dakota, where lower rates in North Dakota. Well, at least at that time, we expected them to be colder than we are here. So that's where the group is. That's why the group is Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Dakota, because
Similar
we
we-
share that weather.
Similar weather.
Yeah. we share that weather.
Thank you. Other comments?
I'll probably maybe echo what Director Bogner said in I can't remember if I called it out in the committee meeting or not, but the measure of the residential electricity burden and the downward trend is very much appreciated and understand. I appreciate that it's measured, and two, the direction that it's going. So thank you all.
So for me, I'm gonna touch on the same topic that Director Bogner referenced, which is time. I think that the reflection that, you know, these strategic directive has served us really well, and we've gone through a few iterations, few changes in the past, and I think it serves us well today. Unfortunately, it is a rear view mirror, right? Hey, how were we doing back in 2023 compared to the region? Right? Well, we were doing really well, and we kind of knew that, but the way we reported is 2 years old. There's a reason for that. In order for us to truly compare apples to apples, we have to wait until the official information is out, because all utilities have different rate structures and we charge things differently, and that makes it complicated, and that's why we have to wait so long. Coming to the reality that we're living in today, not just in our region, but in the country, and frankly, worldwide, with the rapid electrification of the economy, the massive investments in infrastructure that we have to make to serve new load, to replace aging infrastructure, to address climate change, the freezing rivers, the storms, the tornadoes, plant reserve margins. We are in an upward trajectory in terms of rate increases and physical investments that not just OPPD, but we are already seeing everyone around the region doing that. So I would say going forward, I think that's something that's going to be very important for us to discuss, or for the board to contemplate, is how do we still maintain the disciplined view for the rearview mirror using EIA data to measure our competitiveness, while at the same time also get probably a less precise view about where are we today? How does the 6.3% on average rate increase we experienced from 2024 to 2025, how does that compare to the region? How does that compare nationally? We don't have currently a way to discuss that during SD2. We do share that with board members, and it's mostly on an anecdotal basis. Hey, so and so just raised this much. So and so raised this much. But I think now, especially now in the next few years, it's going to be very important for us to know, as we're making investments and our rates are going up, are we still maintaining that competitiveness? And it will be very important for the board and for management to know that ahead of time, and not just 2 years in arrears.
So what I'm hearing you say is, from a strategic implication standpoint, better data, and maybe what we need to talk about is how it shows up in an SD or an SD monitor report.
Correct.
You're naming the need for more timely data that's going to help us make better decisions and put our decisions in better context compared to the utilities around us. Am I getting that right?
Yes. And frankly, I think as we get closer to the end of every year, we present a budget with, last year was a rate increase, this year might be another rate increase, for the board to have a better sense of, hey, how does this compare to the region, right? If we're measuring competitiveness just from a competitiveness perspective, how does this compare today? Now, there's a separate conversation addressing Director Williams' topic about, hey, the home affordability, energy burden, et cetera. That's very important too. But I think we would be well served by having more timely comparisons as the board thinks about budget approvals or rate increases going forward.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just thinking about, like, what's the go-do from a finance committee standpoint? And certainly, I think you named at minimum, it starts to show up as we look at COP and any potential rate action, like I think it's fair to say the board is gonna be interested in what's everybody else doing, right? And who else is doing similar things. I don't know the extent to which it shows up in an SD specifically or in a monitor report, but I think, just from the standpoint of putting it on the committee's radar so that it's something we can start paying attention to and think and being deliberate about how to incorporate it. I think that's good.
I think part of it, and what I would offer is, as we present the COP,
Yeah.
we will start sharing that information. Different versions of how we compare that. Eventually, depending on the board's satisfaction with that type of metric, you may or may not want to include that in the monitor report, but at the very least, it'll be included in presentations about the COP.
Yeah, yes, and our strategic SD2 currently we don't have a goal as it relates to energy burden, electricity burden, right? But we just named that we want to be tracking affordability metrics. We could do something similar with
very true.
More relevant and timely data points, just so we can have eyes on them. So naming it as the target, so to speak. Coming out of the change. I want to call you in for a moment as you've been listening. Anything to add to that?
Great conversation. We'll bring some relative data points when we do the COP on the rates that are going on around us. I think the energy burden is always a critical subject, and we have more control over rates than we do on the energy burden. And I think previously that had kind of obstructed a static goal, for lack of a better term, but it's just great to see it pushed down.
Yeah.
It's never going to be low enough, but just continue to report and continue to push it. So thank you for the ability to comment.
Sure, of course.
I'll just, maybe around the challenges, since we do use the Energy Information Administration's data to do a lot of the math for the metrics that we have. I don't know if that database is at risk of being removed. But I would love, for you guys to take that back and investigate and see if there is that in the ether. Because if it is, we need a plan in place for how we handle the metric reporting going forward.
Yep.
That's a really good point, and I don't have an answer, but we'll follow up.
Well, and it may not be just removed entirely, but delayed.
Or looks different,
Yep.
or maybe this specific data is not available and that database has so much information,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, good call out. Eric?
Looking forward, strategically from the slide that has 4 bullet points, cost of energy when used at the bottom, advanced rate structures. I've commented on this in the past. I very strongly support us getting to advanced rate structures as quickly as possible because I think the benefits are numerous. I know we have a lot of things going, but during the monitoring report on this subject, as we look forward, I just wanted to reiterate that I think that would be very helpful at addressing both the energy burden and some of the other disproportionate costs based on time of use. So I look forward to getting that available as soon as possible.
Colleagues, any other thoughts, comments? Okay, thank you. I'll summarize by saying we've made really great progress, hitting the mark. It is a bit dated and there's, the headwinds are going to continue. But great report. I appreciate it. Okay. We're done.
All right, great. Well, that leaves us ahead of time a little bit, so let's be back at 12:45, please.
So I think on screen, we can see the agenda from the systems pre-committee meeting. We've got several items. First, SD6, and that will be on the agenda later today, so we'll leave that one for now. We have an update about Nebraska City generation and an incident that occurred at a dust collector for board awareness. We have the North Omaha Station ELG item discussed again after questions last month. So some additional clarification during the systems pre-meeting, and that will also be on the agenda later today, so we'll hear more information. We received additional financial stewardship information from Brad Underwood and the team about the ongoing cost savings initiatives and how that's gone so far. I think that was covered in other committees as well, so good to have all the directors familiar with that. Also later today, we will have information about the integrated distribution plan. So there was some preliminary discussion on that. So yeah, good to have that pre-meeting so that we're all ready for today. And we've got several of those items here. So first up is the SD6 policy revision. And I guess I'm not sure who was opening this.
Arlo,
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
So let me introduce quickly, in Gina's absence, my pleasure to introduce Arlo Christensen, our Director of Safety, who's going to present the proposed refinements that we discussed at the systems. Arlo?
Yeah, so when we talked about the monitoring report earlier this year, that was part of the discussion that would be coming back to the board to suggest that you consider a refinement of SD6. As you can see here, this is just a definition of SD6. It requires us to, through continuous improvement and monitoring, that will be recognized as a leader in the industry in relation to safety of the public and OPPD operations. And there's two metrics that we measure based off of SD6. One is the DART rate, one is the preventable vehicle incident rate as well. Next slide. This is the process, and we're actually at the all committee. So this is the process we went through for the refinement process. So we did follow the procedure. So if you can move to the next slide. And then our logic for, well, first of all, I'll start off with saying that we're looking to move to what we call a safety index and measure that over a 12-month rolling average. Our logic for that is our current indicators right now, they just tell us where we've been. They're telling us the history, and they're all lagging indicators that don't take into don't take into consideration like your injury severity, psychological safety. You could probably say psychological safety a little bit, but there's other indicators that can measure that a lot better. And then it doesn't take any proactive safety measures along with that as far as SD6 goes. So we didn't just make this up recently. We've been working on this, I'd say probably for the last 5 years, trying to refine it. We presented at many different organizations throughout the Midwest and a couple throughout the nation. So we've got a lot of feedback as we're going out and doing that benchmarking. And we're actually working with our partners in the state of Nebraska, LES, NPPD, to try to make this common for all of those entities so we can really benchmark those things off of it. And then to move into a 12-month rolling average, that just provides more comprehensive status of the current indicators. The board will still get the January through December because of when we present the monitoring report. So nothing will change in that aspect. You'll still see the DART rate and the PVIR rate. So we're not taking that away. It's going to be visible on that safety index. We're just going to add some other things in there so you can not only see where we've been, but you can see what's impacting where we've been and why we're there. So next slide, please. This is just this is every part of the safety index that's broken down by each individual category. I won't read them, but you can see where we've tied psychological safety and with some of those categories such as injury ratio, hazard reporting, etc. Any questions on any of this? Next slide. And then this is an example of the actual safety index. This was for April of 2025. You can see it was at 84.86. And once again, it does continually put the DART rate and the PVIR rate up there. But it also measures all those other things. And we come up with a score to meet what's in the middle there. So trying to think if there's anything else that's worth pointing out here, but you can see like the things that are in green. If all three of the injury rate, severity rate, and days away were dead, you would suspect that we'd see some of that stuff in yellow as well too. So we'd probably be lacking on some of our hazard reporting, our observation rates, and our required position description training as well. Any questions on that slide?
Could you expand on observation rate or what does that entail? Is that
Well, so what we have is we have a management observation program and we just recently, there was kind of, I don't want to say two programs, but there was a little bit different directions. So we got those combined. So they're both going in the same direction. And when management or the safety folks go out and they observe crews working in the field, there are certain things that we have them fill out. It's on our Industry Safe program. And then we measure how many of those observations that were completed each month.
And those are also, I would assume, noting which processes, which are desirable, or
Yeah.
missed or not.
Yeah, they should notice that we try to have a high concentration on high energy hazards, especially this year is kind of a new thing we're pushing, but they should notice whether you need different tooling, different process. It's not just about the work that the individual is doing or the individual itself. It's about the whole process of the job. So now some of those are what I call quality and some of them aren't. That's where we're still trying to refine that number right there too, because we do a lot of observations, but we're still having injuries. So.
And this required position description training, I assume, is the safety training required by.
It's any safety training, any technical training that they have to do to meet that position requirements. So the required position description training is one that will be hard to achieve 100%. Because you're always going to have people that, apprentices moving up. So they really don't qualify for certain training until they get to a certain step. You have people on sick leave, vacation, so you're always playing catch up in that area. So. Any other questions on that? Next slide, please. This chart here, so on the left, you'll see 0 through 120. That is just in relation to the orange line, which is the actual safety index. So that measurement that I showed on the last slide that said 84, what we did is we charted that, the DART rate and the PVI, so we could show you that there are times when you can see the DART rate going up that the safety index dips below that 80 number that we're suggesting that we try to achieve on a regular basis. The PVIR rate, we've been doing great at that for the last 9 years. We did kind of make it a little bit harder to achieve on the point system on the safety index. So we're kind of challenging ourselves on that as well. But and then the numbers on the right are just the rate for the PVIR and the DART rate itself. Next slide.
So, sorry, on this one.
Go ahead.
Just to be clear, so it's on the same page. On the existing metrics, lower is desirable, and green and purple on the bottom. But I think the point here was that the orange, the new metric, higher is desirable.
Higher is desirable.
And is out of 100.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I think that the main point here is that during the time when we were declining, meaning improving on PVIR, we also were declining on the overall index, the new metric. And I think this is something we talked about during the monitoring report, that we did not feel that the two metrics were sufficiently capturing what would be considered a decline in overall performance, because the metrics were getting better. And so this is a more comprehensive. So just to be clear that they are all shown here together, but lower was better before, higher is better on the new metric. They are both of those things are shown on this slide, just for clarification.
Exact opposite of where we've been, but we're not going to lose that information. It'll still be visible when we do produce the safety index and do the monitoring report as well.
Is that clear for everybody? That's what we should expect when we see monitoring reports moving forward.
Yep. And we'll probably have a slide like this in the monitoring report that shows all that data and how it kind of flows with each other. Next slide. So that's where we're at. We're asking the board establish a long-term goal to continue to improve OPPD safety index target at or above 80%. And once again, I don't think it's captured in this slide, but on a 12-month rolling average. Injuries are injuries. We don't reset at the beginning of the year. Once again, you'll still get the report from year to year, from January 1 to end of December. But this allows us to see trending. It allows us to show you trending that's going on within the organization as well. So. Any other questions?
So talk to me a little bit more about the overall adoption of the safety index. I mean, I know you named that we're talking with other partner utilities in the state, but are we out in front of most others in terms of adoption of this, or help me understand that?
We are leading the way, especially in the power industry. I'm not aware of anybody that has any. I do know that like Cargill does it for their contract personnel. I don't know if they do it for their personnel, but what I can tell you is all the information that we collect and use in the safety index is information that we not only give to like the National Safety Council, the APPA or the LPPC, when they're looking at our measuring our safety programs, it's just more of that information combined for the safety index. So and sorry to interrupt you. So it's not that we can't benchmark, it'd just be a little bit more of a process on our part to gather the data and punch it in our system.
Sure. So that's helpful. Thank you. For me, it raises a couple things. One is when innovation is happening, we should expect that it's going to change over time as more people adopt it, get used to it, learn more. So like, I just assume that we should be comfortable acknowledging that we are ahead of the curve here. And the rubric might change, the goal might change. And I'll just say, like, I'm fine with that, right? Like this, to me, that's good. So, and then it also has me wondering, like, to your point, you can't name a benchmark. We're looking at historicals to ascertain kind of where we're floating around that 80 mark, but I'm curious about why 80 was chosen as opposed to 90, opposed to another number. Like, tell me the magic of why we landed on 80 for the goal.
We actually benchmarked ourselves against ourselves.
Yeah.
With our best years that we had on record.
So
I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it was our 5 best years that we benchmarked that. And there might have been some where it was a little bit below that, but we thought 80 would be the reasonable number to achieve. And we're not trying to make it easy, but once again, there's some of those categories, like anytime you have an injury, it affects 3 of those categories, TCIR, the DART rate, and the injury severity. So it has a huge impact on the index itself, but some of those you'll never achieve 100% in that category as far as like required position description training.
Right.
If you're at an 80% there, you're actually doing really good. So.
That's great. My last question, where did it go? So the board at least is expanding the breadth of what we're monitoring is the way that I'm thinking about this, right? It used to be 2 data points and now we've got more that we're looking at. So to me, I guess that my question to you and Javier, hop in here if you'd like, is how does this change, if at all, anything the district is doing? Does this elevate something as a new priority? Does this deprioritize anything? Or is this maybe just a better matching of what the board should be tracking with what our good safety practices are already?
So I'll tell you really quick. So this is, I'm gonna go back, I don't know, 3, 4 years when I took over this position. Kevin McCormick was still leading. We as VPs, we're used to getting this type of information. Right? Safety started preparing reports that had all of this information, including information that's not even in here. For example, the financial impact of injuries, which was another metric. Not that we would ever trade one for another, but it was important to know the breadth of all the safety indicators in each one of our business units. Mm-hmm. So this is not new internally. The way we're reporting it, the way we're tracking it. I think what we're doing here is elevating it to the board's perspective, a little bit in the spirit of, hey, there's more right here that the board should know. Yes. Things that sometimes we're proud of those things, and sometimes we're not. And I think that's the purpose of this, to say, hey, we may be reporting you the same number of darts, but if the severity is increasing, we should know. Right? It's not just a sprain on someone's hand. Now it's something much bigger. These type of index will start capturing more of that and have a more robust discussion. The last thing I will say, I'm really excited about the observation rate. Director Spurgeon, you asked about that. That is super important. That's part of the culture that we have, and it's something that supervisors, managers, crew leaders, VPs were expected to go out in the field and not only go out and talk to employees, but observe work. And there's training, there's some expectations for managers and supervisors where they have to fill out forms about what they observed, how they're coaching. And I think that, to me, I equate that as an insurance policy a little bit, so to make sure that we're always staying on top of things. Because it's one thing to put in policies in place, but if we're not practicing and coaching and pushing each other, that culture may slip back. So I'm excited about having the observations piece in the index.
Yeah, I don't think it really, well, I know it doesn't take away from anything as far as making us concentrate less on any one category or not. It's just a matter of giving you more information. So you can ask questions, you can see trends. And, you know, if you think we need to change direction, then it gives you that ability to ask those questions, so.
I'm good, thank you.
Well, I'll just mention, I had the pleasure, the honor of going to the Nebraska Safety Council big meeting in which Kevin McCormick was inducted into their Hall of Fame. And it was so here's a big room of people, businesses. Well, I don't have the list that went on and on and on. But all these businesses that are say, oh, safety is going to become really important here. And the number, you know, we've been a member of the safety, this group for 1 year all the way up to 34, 45 years, whatever. And I mean, it was just really heartening. This has been a consistent piece for OPPD for a really long time. And OPPD is the stronger for it. And this was a head scratcher when I heard this in the systems committee meeting and tried to take it all in. But the fact that LES, NPPD, we're all on board with that, I think it's all the good, really helpful for all those organizations. And to be in a group where this is important certainly helps everybody move it along. So it's all good. Thank you.
I sit on the board for the National Safety Council, and they're actually trying to push organizations into measuring, not necessarily with the safety index, but using all those proactive indicators.
If there's no additional questions, we have one more slide, I think.
Yeah.
And that's the determination of next steps. So we can either proceed with recommendation to approve the policy update as listed here, or if there is any additional discussion, feedback necessary, we could have the committee do additional work on this. Committee members, does anyone have any thoughts from this a couple times? Ready to move forward?
Ready to move forward.
Okay. All right, any other directors also good? No additional information necessary? Okay, great.
Usually when we're changing an SD, we go out for public comment.
Yes, that would be the normal process to go out. I think that was still the intended process here, was for it to go out for the 30-day comment review period.
It'll be 60 days this
All
time.
right, so
Yes.
so not moving to a board resolution and vote
Our
on
next board.
Thursday, but we'll wait until August.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Scott, apologies for misspeaking there.
My apology.
Okay, well then, public comment and then bring it back.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've got next steps outlined there then. So next item on the agenda today is North Omaha Station ELG, and Scott.
Hey, good afternoon. Scott Edom. I'm the Director of Engineering Services for Utility Ops. So this afternoon, we're going to talk about the effluent implementation guideline compliance project. Current operations at North Omaha Station for units 4 and 5 create two types of coal combustion residual, fly ash and bottom ash. Water systems are used to transport the bottom ash for further processing. Recall that authorization by the Board of Directors was granted in December of 2023 to purchase a submerged flight conveyor, a major component of the system. I hear several of you got to see the component recently. It has been installed and it does support current and future operations to assist in handling and drying the bottom ash for further disposition. The plant modifications as part of this ELG project will allow compliance with EPA regulations by year end. Complete the next phase, OPPD intends to execute a multifaceted contract covering a wide range of work, which includes grading, foundation work, retaining wall construction, setting of tanks, building and enclosure erection, and route and process the piping to connect various system components. Now, my colleague Jeremy Bowers is going to help outline some of the EPA regulation requirements and why there is a mandatory requirement by the end of the year to have the system in service.
Scott?
Yep.
Jeremy Bowers, I'm Director of Sustainability and Environmental Affairs for the district. That's to provide some clarification on the regulatory driver for this work that has to be done by year end. So first, just a little bit of background. The effluent limitation guidelines are national standards set by the EPA that govern industrial facility discharges to surface waters or publicly owned treatment works on an industry by industry basis. So this is specific to our industry. They were first issued in 2015, but there's been two recent revisions to the rule. They're applicable to steam electric power plants, titled as such for the year that they were issued or became effective. The 2020 revised rule you see are called out is what this project is intended to meet, and that requires a 90% recycle rate for the bottom ash transport water. The rule is administered, in any case, rules are administered through facilities NPDES program. That is a permitting program that the state administers enforcing the federal rules. The compliance timeline for meeting that is also included in the facilities permit. There's also, as you see there on the right, a 2024 revised rule that requires an even more stringent 100% recycle rate requirement. That rule is not applicable to us in our current timeline. It would not be applicable to us until 2029. You may have heard in industry publications or perhaps even mainstream publications that the 2024 rule was listed as one of the potential actions that the EPA is planning to take, a reconsideration of the 2024 rule. That was in a March 12th announcement by the EPA. So transitioning, let's go to the next slide. OPPD, kind of the bottom line is OPPD has to comply with the 2020 rule. So on this slide, just want to talk and give a little more detail on kind of how we came to that conclusion at the time. Upon the announcement of the extension of the timeline at North Omaha Station, we immediately undertook kind of the exercise of the implications and the permitting implications. So those discussions with the NDE confirmed that deferral of the project or deferral of these requirements were not possible without a firm date for transition. And so if you recall, our resolution around the North Omaha timeline is very condition precedent on regulatory approval. That's specifically called out in the rule as being necessary to be able to be considered in a subclass for deferral. So the NDE, we had multiple meetings with them on that and a variety of topics that were relevant to the extension. They came to that conclusion and just want to point out that the NPDES program under which this is administered is overseen by Region 7 EPA. On the right, you see just a summary of the relevant enforcement pathways for a willful violation and an important note there on the bottom about the directive of Strategic Directive 7 Environmental Stewardship that complies us to comply and go beyond compliance where possible. So main takeaways on the regulatory piece around this, before I turn it back to Scott to talk about the engineer certification, is that there's a difference between the 2020 and the 2024 rule. The 2020 revised rule is applicable to North Omaha Station. The facility must be in compliance by the close of 2025. And a deferral was not a compliance option without a date commitment for the fuel conversion. So I'll be standing by for questions. I'll turn it back to Scott.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Aaron, can you go back a couple slides, please? One more forward. Thank you. Okay, so as mentioned, this phase work scope needs to be executed in proper sequence with coordination between many parties to complete per scheduled timelines while minimizing the impact to the operating units. An engineer certification has been prepared, documenting these and other facts supporting this approach. We are requesting that the board approve the engineer certification and allow negotiations to occur and establish a contract or contracts for this phase of the project. And it is important to proceed at this action at this time to allow the timelines to be met. So do you have any questions about the project or the governing regulations?
I don't have any more questions, but I thank you for the additional information that was provided this month.
Of course.
Total cost was about 10 million, is that right?
Correct. Total will be about that much. This phase is less, but total will be about 10.
Anyone else? Additional questions? As was mentioned earlier, a couple of us had an opportunity to visit North Omaha Station a couple weeks ago and see some of the work that's already been in process and completed to date. So appreciate the opportunity to see that. Thank you for facilitating that. Everybody was involved. As just kind of a general summary here, previously approved equipment which has been installed. This will put us in compliance with the 2020 rule, which is included in our NDEE permit. Timeline is by the end of 2025. The cost for compliance by the end of 2025 would be less expensive than the cost for the fees, which would for non-compliance. And the estimated cost up to $10 million is the rough area there. So just kind of a summary of where we are with the discussions last month in the intervening timeline and ready for the action this month. So everybody clear on where we are and what's next?
All right, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Next item, North Omaha, Oppd management.
We have Ryan Kramer. This is the first time that I think he's presented to the board. Super excited about that. He's our senior director of construction and maintenance. So anything that's being built out in the field or in the plants is under Ryan.
And maybe the reason for presenting today, also any contracting activity now recently has been moved under me as well. So this will be done both in-house and with contractors. So you'll probably see a piece of that in that too. So
Something that wasn't mentioned here, under Brian's supervision, we have over 500 employees that work in all the different divisions. So you oversee a very large portion of the company and reporting directly to Troy. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the safety conversation we had resonates largely with me. You know, my team's doing the work. We're the ones, you know, keeping ourselves safe. And so we appreciate their help too. So what I'm speaking here today is Oppd is adding a distribution circuit in Northeast Omaha. This circuit will extend from basically North Omaha Power Station over to Oppd Airfield. If anybody's been to Oppd lately, you see the expansion and the growth. They're basically going to double their load since 2020. This circuit will support that. It will also support, you know, the expansion we're seeing in and around North Omaha as well. So this is an underground circuit. It won't be overhead, so I'll have some resiliency to it. What we're seeking here is authorization from the board to hire a vendor, award a contract to help us with the undergrounding component of this circuit. There is 2.3 miles of circuit here that needs a concrete encased duct. So if you think about digging in the dirt, putting the duct in the ground and pouring concrete on it to protect it, 2.3 miles of that with 35 manholes that go in between to allow us to service that cable down in the future. So this is a labor contract. The materials will be supplied by Oppd. We did have interest in this project. We had 3 vendors give us proposals for this. All 3 vendors were really, I say, technically and legally responsive, so that was good. We did ask for this project to be completed in December of 2025. The reason for that is at that point, they'll hand it off to Oppd internal team. We'll take over, put the cable in the ground, install the electrical components that you might see in and around that area, and then we'll energize this circuit primarily to Oppd first. I think in the beginning of 2026. So if we can get this in our hands in December is the goal. So with authorization there, they would be able to start next month. The bid that was the lowest bid conveniently was Valley Corporation. They had a bid of $2,362,000. The good part here is that was within a few $1,000s of the engineering estimate. So that's good to know and good to have that come in at that direction. And then also we're excited, to partner with Valley Corp here. Valley Corp's been hired by us in the past. We've worked alongside of them. They do real quality work. They work safe, and they're a local vendor for us too. So they're right out of Valley, Nebraska. So the request is to, seek award a contract to a vendor to help us put that undergrounding resources in. Big questions.
I know we have some manholes to access some of the vaults downtown, but other than the downtown area, is this manhole concept, is that something new, or do we have many of those around?
Manholes are essentially buried out of sight. It's good you don't know they exist. That's the intent. The lid is visible, but that's it. The manholes downtown, house a protector and a transformer, and it does a little different function. A manhole in a distribution space really allows you access to the cable that's in the ground. So if a failure would happen or somebody would hit that cable later on, again, as I mentioned, this is going to be concrete encased duct. And so less chances of it getting hit or dug or born into. So.
This plan also support the economic development plans in the area beyond Oppd itself.
Correct. Yep. The initial build out is really, connecting to Oppd initially, but it's there to, focus on that economic development. Yep. In that area.
I would add to that also that so with this, we're taking circuit 116 over towards Oppd, but there's still an additional 5-hole duct bank in there that's empty to pull in new circuits if we need to, additional ones.
So really we future-proofed it is what you might say. While you're in the ground, while you have the vendor installing the duct, it's very cheap at that point to put a little more plastic in the ground and be ready for the future.
Brian, you might introduce your guy.
Yeah, this is Katie Brenneman, construction service coordinator for me. She really interfaces with these contractors and the vendors. She's the one that did all the work putting this together. I get the luxury of presenting it and then having her as a backup. So
Katie's been managing this process for quite a long time.
About 6.5 years so far.
yeah, he's got an engineering background and everything that brings value to an execution team. We're not engineers, and she brings that background and brings that experience with our contractors. So.
Anyone additional questions? All good?
I'm interested that you got 3 bids, and I look and they're local. They're all local.
Yeah, SNN, Nielsen, and then Valley Corp.
In contrast to some of the other resolutions we've had in front of us and projects, you couldn't get any bids. So anyway,
Yeah, it was good. I think that was Katie's fear at first. Is this a large job? It's 2.3 miles of concrete encased duct, 35 manholes that you can't see, and we wondered if there was a company out there willing to bite this off, and we got 3 really good bids. We feel 3 really good companies.
Getting it done in 6 months or 5 months is pretty good.
We're pleased with the size of Valley, right? Ideally, they can put a couple of crews working 2 ends against the middle and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the good fits for us with Valley. They have well over 100 employees. They can gear up quickly. So.
All right, sounds good. Thanks very much. Appreciate it. Thank you both. The integrated distribution plan update. Brad Underwood.
Yeah, thank you, sir. We've had a few updates on this as a board, and effectively what we're doing is we're trying to lay out a more clear plan for what's going on in the distribution system, and it's a multifaceted infrastructure plan that encompasses a number of different aspects, and we'll let Dan talk to that. We're really glad to share an update with you as we're continuing to invest in the planning phase for how we're going to handle an increasingly complex distribution system. So Dan is our director accountable for this, and Dan, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Brad. So again, I'm Dan Lenahan, Director of our Transmission and Distribution Planning Division here at Oppd, and I have the pleasure of providing an update on our integrated distribution plan today. So this slide just shows an outline of what I'm going to be talking about. I'll start off by providing a reminder of the purpose of this integrated distribution plan, or IDP effort, as it's been, I think, a little over a year since I've been in front of the board presenting the scope of this. But I'll spend most of the time today talking about what we've accomplished to date and where we're going next with this. So if you go to the next slide. Starting off with a reminder on the purpose of the integrated distribution plan, or IDP. So I think in order to help understand why we needed to launch into this effort, you really need to understand two things. The first is, what is the distribution system portion of the electric grid? And why do we need to revamp how we plan for it? And the graphic on the right is meant to help illustrate those two things. It shows two very high-level depictions of the power grid, with the traditional view shown in the upper right and a more modernized view shown in the lower right. So starting with the traditional view, the power system or grid can really be broken into three main parts: the generation system, the transmission system, and the distribution system. The distribution system is obviously the focus of today's discussion. But maybe just quickly starting with the generation system, those consist of very large centralized power plants that can be used to produce power hundreds of thousands of homes. Those power plants are interconnected to what's known as the transmission grid, which is a series or network of very high voltage, very large power lines, which takes power from the power plants and shifts them over long distances. This is what connects cities to cities, states to states, utilities to each other, and is really the biggest part of the interconnected power grid in the US. So getting to the distribution system, that is where we take power from the transmission system, step it down to lower voltage, smaller distribution power lines, where we provide direct connections across segments of our systems to our customers. So if you focus your attention on the bottom right-hand side of the slide here, it shows that traditional view, but it shows a bunch of new stuff being added to this traditional power grid. And that new stuff comes in the form of new technology. And I think the past couple of years, we've focused a lot about new technology integration on the bulk generation and transmission side of our grid. We talked a lot about the integration of large-scale renewable energy, wind farms and solar farms. We also talked about the integration of new modernized dual-fuel conventional engines on the bulk system. But we've been having additions of new technology on our distribution side as well. And those have come in the form of customers' adoptions of new technologies, such as rooftop solar, the additions of electric vehicles, and we've been deploying some new modernized devices out on our distribution grid for more advanced control and communication. So it's those new technology additions on the distribution side of the equation of the power grid is why we're launching into this integrated distribution plan. So if you go to the next slide. Hopefully. This slide here basically summarizes the scope of this effort. A lot of information on this slide. I'm not going to go through it all. But 6 months from now, if you really wanted to understand or have a refresh of what this whole effort's about, I'd refer you to this one slide summary here. There are a couple things I do want to point out on the slide, and that is the value proposition of this IDP and the goals of this effort. So I'm simply just going to read the value proposition real quick. So this IDP will describe our existing and evolving distribution infrastructure planning approach towards modernizing the distribution system and its operations to meet customer and community needs in alignment with our Powering the Future 2050 goals and our Strategic Directive 9, which is integrated system planning. So if you look at the table on the bottom right, that lists the goals of the IDP effort, along with our goals for Powering the Future 2050, and how the goals for this effort align with our 2050 goals. So I think it's important I read off the goals of this effort so you understand what we're trying to achieve with it. And the goals are supporting economic health and expansion of our community, accommodating distributed energy resources and electrification, determining foundational investments towards grid modernization, modernizing our design standards and equipment, improving grid flexibility and reliability, and increasing asset utilization on our distribution system. So we have some significant and lofty goals with this effort. So if you go to the next slide, we developed what we called a phased approach to try and develop this first ever integrated distribution plan. So this slide shows that phased approach. Our really broke it into three main phases. I'm going to highlight those today. So in phase one is which we launched into last year, and what we completed was to create a foundational document of the current state of our distribution system and grid modernization efforts. As part of this, we hired a consultant, 1898 company, to help us as they have done these integrated distribution plans at other companies. And I'll highlight what we accomplished here in a moment. We're in the middle of what I'm calling our phase two work, which is to take the information from phase one and develop concrete work streams and initiatives to advance our IDP goals. And then next year, we ultimately plan to publish as part of our phase three an external IDP document in conjunction with our integrated resource plan to create OPPD's really publication of first ever integrated system plan. And then our final phase will just be recurring evaluations and updates of our IDP. So if you go to the next slide, I'm going to start unpacking what we accomplished in our phase one work. So this slide really highlights the major contents of our internal integrated distribution plan phase one document. But as part of that, we really developed some key insights and alignment, along with identifying some of the biggest challenges facing our distribution system now and into the future. And that's some of the stuff I want to highlight on the next few slides. So if you go into the next slide, I'm going to start by talking off some of the key insights and alignment items. So I will kick off by just simply talking about the current state of our distribution grid. So the map on the left is the OPPD service area divided into multiple segments. Those segments represent over 500 distribution circuits that we serve our population. And the two different colors on the map represent the two different voltages of which we serve our distribution customers at. The red is our 13.8 kilovolt distribution system, and the yellow is a 12.5 kilovolt distribution system. And we can really categorize our 500 distribution circuits into three main categories: urban, suburban, and rural. And they can have very different characteristics depending on where you're located in our area. For example, a typical suburban circuit on average spans a couple square miles and on average serves about 1,000 customers. Where if you were going to our rural area, a typical circuit spans or covers an area about 15 to 20 square miles and only serves on average 300 customers. So we serve a diverse population across our entire service area, which drives a diverse set of circuit characteristics across our service area as well. And speaking of characteristics of our system, we have over 12,000 miles of conductor across our entire system, about half of which is overhead, half of which is underground. And that system's been built out over the past 8 years to a lot of varying degrees of design basis. Not only do we have different composition depending on where we're serving the types of customers in our system, but depending on when it got built out, it's going to have very different design basis. So we kind of say all this on our current state of our system just to say that when we're looking to modernize our distribution system, we have a significant set of diversity across it, and there may not be a one size fits all as we go to modernize it in the future. If you go to the next slide, I'm going to start unpacking now current adoptions of new technologies out on our distribution system. I'm going to start by talking about adoptions of new technologies on the customer side of the meter. Three items I'm going to focus on are adoptions of electric vehicles, adoptions of rooftop solar, and adoptions of demand side management. So starting with electric vehicles, we have over 5,800 registered light duty electric vehicles in our service territory. And how I know that is we entered into a partnership with the state DMV office where we get quarterly updates and new registrations of EVs coming in our system. Graphic on the left there, the bar graphs show those quarterly penetration rates of EVs over the past few years. And the line shows the cumulative running total. So as I mentioned, we're at about 5,800 light duty electric vehicles in our service area. So to help put that number in perspective, that is less than 1% of the total registered vehicles in our service area and amounts to much less than 1% of our total system load. So our distribution system has sufficient capacity to accommodate this penetration rate now and into the foreseeable future. But at some point down the road, we know this is going to increase to a higher level, and so we need to start planning for it. Possible planning mechanisms for this is to replace equipment with higher rated equipment. But there may be another option, such as implementing what we're calling a managed charging pilot. And the reason we're looking at potentially launching into that is a few years ago, we initiated a pilot where we installed level 2 chargers in customers' homes. And in exchange, we were able to analyze their charging behavior of their electric vehicles. And we identified a couple key insights. First is a lot of our customers typically plugged in their electric vehicle around 5 o'clock, which unfortunately is about the worst time for them to plug it in because that is our system peak. But what we identified is that the customers typically left their EV plugged in for 12 hours and only charged for 2. They were charging them for the first 2 hours over our peak. So there is potential through a program to shift that charging to off peak and not impact the customer's driving behaviors. And that's something we're going to analyze as we get to the future as a more proliferation of EVs coming onto our system. As I mentioned right now, our distribution system capacity can support the current penetration rates we're seeing.
Would that mean you plug something in and it'd be a delayed charge?
There's a lot of different mechanisms to do that. Yeah, you could program when the vehicles could charge, either locally at the charger and the vehicle itself. I'm going to move to talk about rooftop solar additions on our system. So similar to the EV graphic, you look at the graphic in the middle, that shows penetration rates of rooftop solar on our system. The bar graphs show the amount of rooftop solars being added each year over the past 10 years, and the line shows the running cumulative total. Similar to EVs, the penetration rates are increasing, but they still account for really less than 1% of our total customer base that has these. And there's basically been zero impact on our distribution system to date, and our distribution system has never been an impediment to allow these type of installations on our system and is not forecasted to in the near term. Nevertheless, the rates are increasing and we want to ensure our system can continue to accommodate these. So we wanted to evaluate our processes for how we evaluate and intake these. So one of the biggest things we did a couple of years ago was overhaul our distribution, our customer-owned generation application process. We developed an online portal where customers can submit their applications online for better submittal of applications. And then internally, we can track them and review them much quicker based on this online process. So we really shrunk down our review and approval timeline quite a bit by going to this new process. Maybe just a quick public service announcement is I just want to make sure it's made aware that it is critically important that any customer that wants to install a rooftop solar or other distributed energy device on their system needs to fill out one of these applications for our review and approval. So why is that? Well, it's twofold. We need to make sure we have safety of our line technicians working on the system so that these systems are installed properly. We need to ensure we maintain the reliability and power quality of our system so that these systems don't cause issues on other customers located on the circuit. So again, the customer application process is very important to work through to install these on our system. Third customer technology adoption I want to talk about is demand side management. So Oppd currently offers 3 major programs for demand side management to reduce demand on the system. And currently the adoption rates of our customers amount to about 125 megawatts of total demand reduction. That's about a 5% demand reduction total on our system. So it's a material amount. There are 3 types of programs that we offer. 2 of them involve controlling or lessening of air conditioning load control on our system. And the 3rd program involves with our businesses the dispatch of their backup diesel generation to reduce demand out in the system. So Oppd's current approach is a broad brush solicitation to customers across our entire system. And again, by doing demand side reduction, you can reduce the amount of generation reserves we carry on our system for supplying our customers' demand. But there is potential that if we go to a more targeted approach, the spots on our system where our distribution system is starting to reach capacity, not only can demand side management help lessen the amount of generation we can carry on our system, it may be able to lessen the need to expand infrastructure on our distribution system. That's something we're going to look at going forward. So I'm going to now transition to the next slide where I talked about customer adoptions of new technologies. I'm now going to talk about Oppd's adoptions of new technologies on the distribution system. I'm going to talk about distribution automation, or DA. So what is DA? DA is the use of advanced sensors, controls, and communication devices located out on the distribution system. If you want to see what they look like, look at the graphic on the right. It shows multiple new devices that we deployed out on the distribution system, including a communication system to get more advanced control and sensors devices out there. The graphic on the left shows a timeline of Oppd's evolution history with distribution automation. I just want to unpack a couple things with that because we do have a long history with it. But starting in 2017, we launched what was called a smart grid pilot project in Northeast Omaha, where we installed multiple new distribution automation devices across 5 circuits in our service territory in Northeast Omaha, similar to the graphic that you see on the right. And we learned a lot from that pilot project, but there was one particular device that we gained a lot of knowledge and benefit from, and that was known as a smart communicating recloser. So what is that? It's basically an automated switch that you put out on the distribution system. And using multiple of these in the pilot area, what we saw is when there was an incident or a fault on a distribution circuit, say a tree branch gets into a circuit, these devices can quickly detect where the issue is, isolate the problem to a small amount of customers, and quickly reroute power to other unaffected customers quickly. So the benefit here is it really reduced the amount of customer outage minutes in this area. So we wanted to take this device and roll it out to other parts of our system. So in 2021, we started rolling these out to maybe more rural areas where communication systems can be more stressed. And we've had very good success with these in our rural area. So ultimately what that led us to is in our integrated distribution plan phase 1, is we developed a philosophy for a system-wide rollout of these DA smart recloser devices across our system. we developed a phased approach to try and align with grid modernization grants, as there's a fair amount of grant money out there for grid modernization. I'm gonna move on from the DA topic and now move into the next slide. I think this slide you've seen many, many times before, but this is our efforts to do our advanced metering infrastructure ecosystem program. So I think you've gotten quarterly updates on this from Mr. Aaron Smith, who's our Director of Distributed Device Strategy. So obviously a big part of this is installing new meters at the premises, but this is so much more than installing new meters. It is a huge overhaul of all of our major distribution platforms, from operations, outage management, asset management, and field service management. So that complete overhaul is really going to modernize the way we plan and operate our system. So I'm not going to go through a bunch of detail of this since you get quarterly reports, but there's one thing I want to emphasize here. As part of our integrated distribution planning effort, we wanted to determine what are key foundational investments towards modernizing or building our next generation grid. And through that effort, we really identify this AMI ecosystem are those key foundational investments to make. It's going to get us better situational awareness and real-time operations of our system, but it's going to give us more data than we've ever had to plan our distribution system of the future. Go to the next slide. So in addition to the key insights and alignments I just talked about, I just have one more slide on the phase one summary, and that's to identify what are the biggest challenges facing our distribution today and in the near future. And those are listed on the slide. So just to quickly unpack them, starting with the first one, just simply building a next generation modernized grid. It's exciting but complex. It's very capital and resource intensive. And our near-term investment focus on modernizing our grid is that AMI ecosystem, which I talked about on the previous slide. Second challenge facing us is trying to maintain reliability and resiliency of our distribution system. So as part of OPPD strategic directives, number 4, reliability, and number 5, customer satisfaction, we benchmark ourselves on reliability statistics from others across the country, and also how our customers perceive their reliability and benchmark those against others across the country. And through those monitoring reports to the board, we received first quartile performance the past few years, so we're doing very well. However, over the past few years, I'm sure you're very well aware that we've had some pretty significant increasing megastorms come through our area, which is really starting to test customer patience and test the resiliency of the distribution grid. So as we plan our distribution grid of the future, the resiliency of the grid to these megastorms is something we're going to have close in mind. The third challenge I wanted to talk about is what we've titled coordinated versus integrated distribution functions. So we literally have hundreds of employees that work on our distribution system on a daily basis, whether that's expanding it, replacing equipment, rebuilding it, relocating equipment. It is the most dynamic part of our electric grid because there's always some type of hands touching it. So we have to be very good at how we coordinate all that work, and we've gotten very good at it. But we feel like we can get better and transition from really good coordination to more integrated solutions for solving multiple distribution grid needs at the same time. And that AMI ecosystem platform I talked about earlier is going to be our first major evolution step to start to work towards more integrated distribution designs, as we'll have more common platforms to see and talk about the distribution system at the same time across the organization. The last challenge I want to talk about is unprecedented load growth. I'm guessing you've heard about this topic many, many times before. You've probably heard the headlines. Coming out of the pandemic, Douglas County had the highest gross domestic product growth rate out of any county in the entire country. Last year, Forbes Home voted Omaha the #1 place to move to. This year, U.S. News and World Report voted Omaha as the hottest housing market in the country. The growth that we are dealing with is just unprecedented. Can't say that enough. We've added over 28,000 customer meters over the past 5 years. That's the equivalent to a small city in Nebraska.
That's larger than the Grand Island utilities.
Correct. The last 5 years, we basically added the size of Grand Island in our service territory. In addition, not just the volume of meters we've added, it's the amount of demand behind those meters. The amount of large commercial and industrial requests that are coming onto our system is just significant. So with all this growth, we're having to expand our distribution system quite a bit. And our plans to expand it over the next 5 years are likely going to be 3 to 4 times bigger than what we've expanded on our system the past 5 years. So of these 4 challenges, the #1 challenge that's staring our distribution system in the face is this unprecedented load growth. And it's going to be our #1 challenge for the next foreseeable future as well. we don't want to lose sight of these other challenges as we plan our distribution grid now and into the future. So I'm going to transition from highlighting our phase one work to now going with what we're doing with this in phase two on the next slide. So this summarizes the scope of our phase two work, but really what our phase two work is, and we're in the middle of it right now, is taking all the information we learned from phase one and developing a concrete set of work streams or initiatives to advance towards our integrated distribution planning goals. There was a lot of ideas and options to select from for integrated distribution planning work streams, but we had to narrow it down to a concrete set of few, and how we narrowed them down was based on prioritizing, addressing the major challenges we're facing, along with wanting to accomplish some quick wins in 2025. So if you go to the next slide, just unpack some of those real quick. So I'll focus your attention on the table on the top. These are the three specific work streams that we're in the middle of as part of our phase two work. On the table, you'll notice the name of the work stream on the left, the challenge that we're trying to solve that work stream in the middle, and you'll notice of the three work streams, you'll see load growth as two challenges. As I mentioned, that's one of our biggest challenges we're facing now. And then the far right describes the benefit or the objective of the work stream. So just maybe quickly summarizing what we're trying to do with these work streams. The first one is we're trying to modernize how we do geospatial load forecasting. So basically, how do we predict where load growth is going to grow in our system better? Not only the amount of load growth, but the type of load growth, including the proliferation of EVs and distributed energy resources. And this new tool will help us do that. We also are going to review our distribution capacity designs to see if we can eke more capacity out of our existing designs, but also determine, do we need to come up with better, bigger designs to deal with all this growth that's coming at us in the near future. And then the third one is to develop more concrete distributed energy resource integration guidelines. I mentioned earlier, we have a very, very small percentage of distributed energy resources on our system, and our distribution system's never been an impediment to allow them, but we're seeing an increased number of these, so we want to get ahead of that and plan how we integrate those better into the future to make sure our distribution system can continue to accommodate the naturally growing rate. The table on the bottom, if you focus your attention on that, are work streams related to the IDP, but were not initiated out of the IDP. But if they weren't initiated, they would have been, because they're very important to reaching our goals. So I just wanted to unpack some of those as they relate to it. We are reviewing and revamping our large customer intake and evaluation process due to the huge volume of requests we're getting for new customers on our system. We are advancing our AMI ecosystem, which I've talked about, but we're also maturing our distribution automation program to go much more beyond just those recloser devices I talked about. And then finally, there's a systems weather hardening initiative, which is geared towards determining more modernized designs to deal with those mega storms that keep hitting us. If you go to the next slide, I'm finally at the wrap up, key takeaways and next steps. So this was a lot of information. So I'll try and summarize what I want you to kind of remember from this, because I know it's been a long few slides. So as part of our phase one work, the key takeaways I want you to take away what we completed in 2024 is we developed a foundational document to align the organization on the current state of our distribution grid and grid modernization efforts, and determine what our near-term investment focus areas should be, which is that AMI ecosystem platform as we move towards grid modernization. We identified some of the biggest challenges facing our distribution system now and into the future, and the biggest one staring us in the face right now is unprecedented load growth. Taking that information from phase one, we developed those specific work streams in phase two to advance our integrated distribution planning goals, which I just talked about. Where we're going next year is to take all this information from phase one to phase two, put it in an integrated distribution plan document, merge that with our planned rollout of our integrated resource plan, and then issue that publicly as part of OPPD's first ever integrated system plan in 2026. And then there'll be a reoccurring evaluations of this going forward. So I believe that is my last slide here.
Could you repeat that? That was going to be one of my questions, was integration with the IRP. Could you repeat that again?
Yes. So our integrated resource plan is on a frequency of every 5 years. Our next planned publication of that is in 2026. So as part of this effort, developing our first ever integrated distribution plan, we want to roll that publication into the integrated resource plan. And so what we're really planning to issue in 2026 is something called our integrated system plan, which goes well beyond just new resources that we're planning for our system. So it'll be a lot of information when we publicize that, and it'll be a big effort, not only to produce this for the first time in our history, but then merge that with our IRP. So, but that is our goal as of right now.
This is a dream come true for me. I think personally, I'm gonna go back about 3.5 years ago when I appointed Brad Underwood as Vice President of Systems Transformation. We were just putting all those groups together, and I challenged Brad. I said, hey, we need an integrated distribution plan, and challenge accepted, and here you have phase one. But I think this is truly the convergence of transmission, distribution, generation planning all together, because we really can't speak about any of these individually anymore. Like this is all part of one big effort. So I really appreciate the way this is coming together.
All right.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of information. Any questions?
How is this, so to that end, how is this an input to, or how does it relate to the actual work of the IRP? Like, how are those? Yeah, they'll get folded in together at the end. I get that, but like in terms of the development of the IRP, that process, how does does this inform some of that IRP work, I assume? Yeah.
So I think we are still working through that ourselves as we go. But I think ultimately is, yes, we want the effort from the IRP to inform what we do on the distribution system and vice versa, especially as these modernized technologies start to integrate across all of the power grid. Because as I said before, there's really three main parts of the power grid. There's the generation or resource supply, there's the transmission grid, and then this distribution system. And there's really three succinct handoffs between each currently today. As new technologies keep getting integrated into the system and we modernize it, those succinct handoffs start to blur, where we have really a traditional one-way flow of power that may start to change to an advanced two-way control power and communication system. So we really need to plan for our different parts of our system way more integrated than we ever have in the past.
So an example of this could be during the IRP, and I don't know exactly if this is the way it's going to play out, but an example could be location of generation, location of energy storage, location of voltage and frequency control instruments. All of those will have to take into account the load as a whole. They will take into account our transmission system, but also the distribution piece, because there's a difference between putting an energy storage device in one neighborhood versus another one. And this is where you get down to the distribution grid. So that's an example of how I think these three worlds will start converging.
I think one of the things we run into a lot when we do the IRP is there'll be a customer owner there or a customer who is asking about some aspect of scope outside of the IRP. And a lot of times it has to do with how are you investing in the distribution system, to Javier's credit 3 years ago when he chartered this, or why can't you build transmission and not build generation? And aren't you looking at this? And so it allows a more comprehensive discussion on kind of the system as a whole.
Sure.
And what I'm hopeful we'll see is, if you remember the modules for the IRP where you had a conversation and then you got customer feedback and you had a conversation, customer feedback, and it's like this reciprocal exchange. You might see something like that for the IDP, where we go and we lay it out and we talk about the complexity and where it's going and how we're using it and how we're trying to make it more efficient, reliable. And then there's maybe an aspect there where there's a customer conversation where they can speak to the elements.
Anyone additional comments, questions? I'm thrilled to see this. This is something I've long been very supportive of, so glad to see it moving forward. Thanks very much for the presentation. There've been a couple of kind of specific technical efforts that I've asked about in the past. They've been undertaken by other utilities, a value of solar study and a hosting capacity analysis. And so from our projected future work here on DER integration guidelines are those two specific efforts to understand the economics of distributed generation and hosting capacity analysis is a term that has been used in other places. Is that what we mean by DER integration guidelines?
Yeah, so what we mean by DER integration guidelines is, I guess some of the background I gave is we have less than 1% of our customers currently have these type of installations on our system, and our distribution system's never been an impediment to them. It's not forecasted in the near future. So we really don't see the need to set up a hosting capacity analysis. But we do want to start the pathway of determining maybe there's certain percentage rates on our system where we want to start monitoring them closer. So kind of penetration guidelines as the next major step that we want to evaluate. And that's really what those integration guidelines are more geared towards. So again, this particular IDP is focused on making sure our system can accommodate what our customers want, not necessarily trying to incentivize any certain technology or the other. You asked about a value of solar, so that is definitely not particularly part of this IDP scope. But I think as part of merging this with our integrated resource plan, so the value of various types of resources are analyzed in the IRP. And where the IDP or integrated transmission plan comes in is where you place those resources has impacts on the grid. And that's where you see the integration of the system planning versus the resource planning. So I don't know if directly there's a particular value of solar study, but there's a value of resource types that are done in the IRP, which will be merged in with our integrated transmission and distribution plans. So I don't know if that directly answered your question, but that's how I like to answer it.
One of the things I'm excited about is, as we're able to look at some of these circuits, the ability to correlate which circuit might have trouble first and to see it coming. So Dan talked about the health of the system and how these aren't today issues. Well, we deal in planning with years 5, 6, 7, 10 today. So that's why we're doing this. And the identification of hyperlocal areas where you might have a program that makes sense to do. And so if you're able to identify the circuits first and see them coming, then can you apply a product and development solution into that area of the circuit for a low cost solution for everybody. It would be moving us towards that sort of thing.
Great, glad to hear it. I guess just point in the direction of when we talk about the integrated resource plan broadly, will this also allow consideration of distribution sided resources as aggregated resources as something we would consider for future resource planning efforts? I mean, generally we've done generation and transmission on one side of the interface and distribution is on the other side. Are we anticipating that we will understand the potential value of distribution side resources sufficiently that aggregation or BPPs might be something we would consider for future procurement potentially, or part of our larger resource planning effort?
Yeah, we would look at the supply and the demand side solutions, as you know. And then the other thing, just to enforce the answer, is 10 CFR 905, which is the Code of Federal Regulations that requires the IRP, is explicit that you contemplate that. So, yeah, I'm giving you a general. I'm not saying yes or no to VPPs or anything, but it would be the broad supply and demand side, and what's the best solution for everybody.
Great. Yeah, as we look forward, I think the potential for customer-sided resources is significant. And the constrained availability of new generation, I think we should be looking at all options, and there are a lot of rooftops available. So I'll just leave it at that for now and look forward to additional discussions.
Understand.
Anybody, anything else here? This is information item now, but I think we expect additional engagement both with the board. Do we have a timeline for future presentations on this work? We've done quarterly on AMI. I guess I'm not sure when we anticipate future updates.
Great question. The next big push would be to continue working aspects of the plan that need to be worked prior to sharing it in 2026. But really what's happening right now is the IRP and IDP are coming together in the planning stages. And I think we're going to bring more of that back to systems and Javier.
So I don't expect these to be a quarterly report to the board, but certainly next year, as was discussed, we'll have a few opportunities to engage.
Sounds good. Thanks for the clarification. All right, that was the last item of the systems committee, and it was information only. So I think with that, when he's done, back to you, Chair Ford.
Awesome, thank you. That takes us to confirming our agenda for Thursday. With that, I have an announcement. We're going to do Thursday's meeting virtually. The Omaha Douglas Civic Center is closed for the Juneteenth holiday. So folks that are listening online, Thursday will be virtual. We'll post that and have have some notices coming up, but do any directors want to move anything from the consent agenda?
We moved the opt-out service charge for AMI.
Yep, number 12.
Yes.
Anybody else? All right. Hearing that, we'll move item 12 to board discussion action items.
And quickly, we will send instructions, refresher instructions on online board meetings because we all became experts during COVID and it's been a while. So we have a couple of days to refresh.
Yeah, thank you. So next, before we adjourn, we'll take comments from the public on items of district business. Comments made by all parties during the meeting are part of the official public record. First, we'll do, I'm sorry. Holy cow. Thank you. We're going to review the board work plan. Mr. Foch, can I punt to you? Thank you.
Yes, very quickly here. I want to highlight that customer and public engagement, there's one action item, and Tim McAreevy, Director Howard, and I will be meeting here early tomorrow to address that. We would intend for there to be an update on that. The Finance Committee, there's one item that's on hold that will be resolved. The items that you see as finished on 8:30 are really ones that we tend to resolve through the upcoming board workshop. Governance items, I would slide down to, sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing that from here, so I'm going to go to my notes here. It's my eyes that have aged, so you'll see several items that are listed as 8. Oh, you made it quite large. Thank you.
We thank you.
If you want to shrink it down a little bit so we can at least see the
It's
dates.
one side or the other.
That would be helpful. No, that's very good. Actually, it's all on me. You'll see several items there that are dated 8:30 or 8:21. Those are ones that we are planning to work through the normal process of the board workshop as well. I will bring you down to the one that's dated 6:10. It was implement the practice of adding guiding questions to pre-committee agenda topics. I think we did a nice job of this in the risk committee, working with Director Bogner. She was one of 2 that had suggested this as a format change, and I think we aligned around that working well. So we'll be working with other committee liaisons to kind of bring that practice forward. And the next item that I wanted to highlight was, well, actually the one that's due on 6/17, we've not had an opportunity to really review and refine board policy development. This particular item was really focused on those where we had refinements that there may have been tension or disagreement between management and board and how to best address those. That just has not surfaced yet. So that one actually will end up staying on hold for a bit. And then finally, I wanted to highlight GP 14, board expense reimbursement. There was action on that this month in the risk committee. There was a determination made that we have red lines to move forward, and that item will come forward in the August meeting. We just didn't want to add to this agenda. One of the things I just wanted to add about on the risk committee agenda was one of the items that we talked about was the Forest Mazars auditor. We had a great conversation around what a wonderful job they are doing as auditors and the skills they bring to OPPD and the work that they've done. In 2023, we signed a 5-year agreement with them. So at the end of 5 years, which would be after the 2027 audit, is when we would intend, just as good vendor management practices would warrant, we would go out for RFP. That would be, they will have at that time been with us for 10 years. They could be with us for 10 more after that. But we will go out for RFP at the end of that 5-year cycle after 2027 audit.
Thank you for correcting the risk committee report. We can answer back to the board via chat. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Over. All right. Thank you. So now we'll move on to the opportunity for public comment. Not seeing any comments in the room. Okay. Ms. Lane, how about any comments online?
David Corbin. Let me move him to where he can.
Can you hear me?
You bet, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. In listening to the discussion about DER and IDP, I noticed that there's been quite a decrease in the number of solar on-roof solar. And I'm wondering two things. One, how is OPPD working with the Solar for All grant from the Center for Rural Affairs? And one thing I keep harping on over and over, and many other organizations have been having meetings about this, we still don't understand why OPPD can't do on-bill financing like many other utilities do. And again, there's organizations willing to work with you and be like you've done with United Way now taking over the Greener Together. You could have some setup similar to that. But speaking of the United Way and the Greener Together, Jamie Wagner did call me, and I understand she's either moved on or just about to move on. So I don't need to know who the new contact is, but she said that the people that donate will no longer get to vote each grant period. I find that troubling, but if that's what you're going to do, because that's what United Way wants to do, and I understand there's some kind of a committee that makes the ultimate decision, and she read that list to me. At the very least, as I indicated to her and to you, that the people who donate then should be able to vote for the people who are making those ultimate decisions. And that doesn't mean everyone that's on that board, but at least half, I would think. And then finally, as a former board member of the National Safety Council on Nebraska, I appreciate your emphasis on safety. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are any other WebEx attendees, please send the meeting host a message using the chat feature or utilize the hand raise feature.
Do not have any.
Okay, great. With no further comments, we'll move into closed session. And this closed session will be convened to discuss two topics. We're going to finish up discussion on customer growth update from this morning and security awareness. Director Bogner, do we have a motion to go into closed session?
Oh, we sure do. Okay. Sorry. Scared. I don't know what I'm gonna say. Help me out.
Sure.
Can you?
We can just make a motion, Director Bogner.
Thank you. I move that we go into closed session at this time,
Second.
2:05 PM.
That's great.
Thank you.
So 5
We
p.m.
need to specify which topics.
We need to specify the topic.
To discuss.
So make your motion will be for the customer growth update for this morning and then the security awareness topic.
All right, let me try this again. I move that we go into closed session at this time, 2:05 PM, to discuss two topics, continuation of our customer growth update and the safety update.
Security awareness.
Security awareness update. Thank you. No words on this. I need a second.
I think that was one.
Second.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Lane, we have a motion and a second. Can you take the roll, please?
Director Wagner? Yes. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Dr. Clark.
Yes.
Oh,
Step down.
okay. Director Hudson.
Yes.
Director Moody.
Yes.
Director Sturgeon.
Yes.
Director Williams.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The motion to go into closed session is passed. This closed session will be limited to 2 topics. We're gonna finish up our discussion on customer growth update that wasn't concluded this morning in that closed session. And then, the other topic is security awareness. No votes or other board action will be taken.
Oh, it's his own.
All right.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for your patience.
Great, thank you. Motion and second is required to reconvene in open session.
So moved.
Second. Thank you.
Wagner. Yes. Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Court.
Yes.
Howard, absent. Hudson. Absent. Moody.
Yes.
Sturgeon.
Yes.
Williams.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The motion to come out of closed session at 3:22 PM is carried. This closed session was limited to discussion regarding 2 topics, customer growth update from this morning and security awareness. No vote or other board action was taken. And now we'll adjourn at the same time, 3:22 PM. Thank you all.